Oh, yeah, no, I don't need it on.
All right, so we'll call to order the City Council meeting, City of Beaumont, for Tuesday, June 20th. And we'll call to order at 5:10. And we'll begin with a roll call.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Orozco. Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll. Here. Mayor White.
Here. And did you want to make comments before? Oh, first of all, there are no public comments, correct?
Public comments.
Okay. So I'll open and close the public comments at 5:11. All right.
So the council is going to go into closed session. Item 2 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.92, and or 3, one potential case involving a claim by Alan Kapanicus. Item 3, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. And do you have, Madam Clerk, do you have the APN number or the property address?
No, not here.
Okay. We'll need to provide that before we go into closed session.
Okay.
And that is the agency negotiator on that matter is City Manager Todd Parton or his designee. The negotiating parties are the City of Beaumont and Beaumont Unified School District under negotiation price and terms. And the next item is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.92, claim of Jessica Sherd. And item 5, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4, consideration of initiation of litigation, one case against former city attorneys Aklufi and Wasaki. And if the council would give me just a minute, I can go grab the APN number.
Okay.
So on item number 3 for closed session, the APN numbers are as follows: 418-190-004, 418-190-005, 418-190-006, 418-190-007. And this is near the corner of Beaumont Avenue and 4th Street. And that's it.
All right, so we'll adjourn to closed session at 5:14. Joint statement. We filed the city and WRCOG filed these lawsuits. So I have a joint statement with the City of Beaumont and WRCOG that I'd like to read. City of Beaumont and WRCOG have been harmed by the financial schemes of Urban Logic and its former officials. These officials and others have been arrested, and the district attorney is prosecuting them for some of their wrongdoing. Their acts have caused tens of millions of dollars of harm to the city and WRCOG. The city and WRCOG intend to hold these individuals and Urban Logic accountable for their actions and to ensure that it does not happen again. In its lawsuit, the city alleges that Urban Logic and its former owners engaged in improper activities and self-dealing that resulted in Urban Logic receiving approximately $85 million from the city. The city and WRCOG lawsuits require Urban Logic and its former owners to pay back the millions they made through these improper activities and to compensate the City of Beaumont and WRCOG for the damages caused by their conduct. The city and WRCOG have reached a settlement of the lawsuit brought by WRCOG and resulted in a $67 million judgment against the city and are no longer in conflict with each other. Now that the city and WRCOG have resolved their dispute, they are working together to pursue those who profited from wrongdoing. Urban Logic had the audacity to sue the city last month, asking for even more money from city taxpayers. The city is working with WRCOG pursuant to its settlement agreement, and because of WRCOG's expertise and resources to uncover the fraudulent activities. This combined effort will not stop or delay the district attorney's ongoing prosecutions. Thank you. So now we'll move on to public comments. Public comment period. Any one person may address the city council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give to the city clerk. There's a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the council from discussing or taking actions brought by your comments. Before I open the public comment period, I do want to acknowledge that I skipped over adjustments to agenda. So are there any requests for adjustments to the agenda? Okay.
Could we move up item number 25 to maybe before item 23, because we have a number of members of the public who I think are here for item 25.
Does anyone have an objection to that? Okay, so we'll move 25 to right after the consent agenda and right before item number 23.
Thank you.
And now open public comments at 6:34. Do we have any comments?
Yes,
Okay.
one. Anita Worthen?
Welcome, Mayor, Council, everyone. This is regarding our job fair coming up on Thursday. It's being held and hosted by the Veterans Expo Services. We usually have our Veterans Expo in January. So many people have been asking about jobs, so we decided to have a job fair this Thursday. And we have about 30 different agencies and companies that are coming. Just a few of them will be like FedEx Ground, the city of Hemet really is coming, as we have Pericone Juice has been very good with us. The different transit agencies for RTA, for Sunlines, for Pass Transit, which is the Beaumont banning one. The HR for Loma Linda Hospital is coming, so they're hiring, as well as the VA Loma Linda. We have quite a few. And so we just ask for your support and get the word out that this will be this Thursday. It will be here in the auditorium, and it's from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And so anyone that's looking for a job, and I should say, we have law enforcement that will be coming. The Riverside Sheriff's Department is really hiring, as well as the Banning Police and the CHP. We will have the presence of the Beaumont Police here. So we have quite a few that will be coming, as well as some of the companies that are not right now hiring. They will be here to let people know that are seeking jobs what skills and experiences they require when they are ready to hire. So again, that's this Thursday, and we thank you for allowing us to have that.
Thank you, Ms. Worden.
No other comment.
So I will close public comments at 5:35. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion here or at the end of action items. Approval of all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. Are there any requests for items to be pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I have a request. I'd like to pull item 6, 23, and 26.
23.
23 is not a consent
Oh,
agenda.
my apologies. I was just testing you.
Okay. Todd got it before I did.
Just item 6.
Mayor, I'd
Not
like to
22?
No, I said 23, and that's also an action item.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to pull 16, quick
Okay.
question, and 17 with another question.
So I'll make a motion to approve the balance, which is items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Roscoe, Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. So let's go to item 6 first, Mr. Lara.
I believe the council had recently approved a comp study not too long ago. I'm assuming that these positions would be on that comp study, so I think it would be best for us, council, to get all the background information we can to make sure that we can make the best decision moving forward in that regard, make sure our employees are properly compensated for their efforts.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to, if we could, just table this item in that regard.
Before we vote on that, what's the time frame of when you expect the comp?
We're finalizing the negotiations with Ralph Anderson, who we awarded our proposal to at our last council meeting. So we gave them a pretty tight timeline to get their class and comp study work completed. So would anticipate that we'll at least have some preliminary results within the next 90 to 120 days.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a question on that.
Sure.
Mr. Parton, the the Community Development Director, I noticed that it had the Economic Development under that umbrella, and I'm wondering how the Economic Director is going to fit in that. Is this the director that's going to answer to the Community Development Director, or is it going to be separate?
It'd be separated because right now we have one person who is trying to do senior planning work as well as economic development. So we've created a full-time economic development position that will go into effect with next year's budget. So that would be a direct report to the city manager's office now. So it'd be removed from the planning. So
Okay, so when the director's filled, then that's going to be a separate position? Is that going to be management also?
yes.
And then it'll report to
Well,
the city
yeah,
manager?
We're looking at a manager or coordinator type position to start with, because it will be a single office person that will be working full-time for economic development. So they won't be directly supervising another division or another operation. So, so planning, building and safety, our CDBG, GIS, all those other operations would still remain under the direct management and oversight for the community development director position.
Is that the way that we discussed it when we discussed the position?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are there any other questions,
No.
comments? Do we have any requests to speak on this or any of the other items on the consent agenda? Okay. So did you want to make a motion to table it?
Yeah, can I make a motion to table this item until we have the documentation back from the compensation study?
Right, classic comp study.
Class and comp study, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. So we'll move on to item number 16. Mr. Martinez, you pulled that one.
Yeah, on 16, my question was, it looks like we're going to RFP in July. So are we going to, is the 24,000 to finish off the invoice through March of 2018? And then the RFP then is for something after that, the next year?
The RFP is for, we'd like to expand the service. We're paying about $25,000 just for the service that we have now, and we want to go out and look at how other agencies are tying not only this service, but scheduling software, cameras, all of it as a package. So we can certainly still terminate the contract at any time. It may not go till March of 18, but this particular invoice covers us until March of 18.
Okay, and that was my concern. I just wanted to make sure we were getting a good value for that. So
Right.
that's what you're intending to do,
Right.
it sounds like.
We think it's a little expensive, but it is a valuable service. to
Yeah, and
the
that's kind of
passenger.
where I was too. It looked like a great service, but the price tag, I was concerned if that was in the ballpark range, but.
Right.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Can you briefly explain what double map is?
Double Map is a software program that is GPS real-time tracking for passengers to locate the buses. And when we rolled it out a few years ago, we called it Know When to Show. And basically, it's on your smartphone. If you're standing at a bus stop, you can pull up the Double Map app. It's free to passengers. They don't pay anything for it. And they can actually see when their bus is coming so that they're not standing there wondering if they missed it or if it's ever going to come. And passengers rely on it heavily. It's cut our call volume down significantly because people would call us and say, "Where's the bus?" And now they know. For certain passengers that live close to bus stops, they know when to leave their house. They don't have to stand out in inclement weather waiting for the bus to come. So it's a great program.
Are there any other questions? Okay, and you already verified Esri is not involved in this?
Esri has never done business with Double Map in the past, current, and they said probably not in the future.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion on item 16.
So I move that we approve the Double Map invoice in excess of $10,000.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And item 17, Mr. Martinez?
The only question I had was that in the report, or in the staff report, it mentioned a written report for the 20th. And did I miss that?
The staff report is the written report.
Oh, so that's, okay. That was- okay, because I said written report, it's like I didn't see anything attached to that. So, okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on 17?
Make a motion to approve item 17.
One second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. All right, we'll now move to item number 25. It's been moved up. The County of Riverside San Gregonio Crossing Recirculated Environmental Impact Report. 534 comment letter.
For council direction, we have this back on the agenda. We had our consultant review the recirculated EIR and found the comments are pretty much the same. So we wrote the new letter with the same comments and addressed it based on the current timeline. If you have any questions, I can answer any.
We do have some public comments on this. Okay, we'll ask our questions first and then go to public comments. I noticed that one of the new issues raised by the letter was that the new EIR did not, or is it technically a new EIR?
It's considered a recirculated EIR, so it's not a new EIR.
Okay. And I think one of the issues that was brought up by the letter was that there was no indication of what, from the authors of the EIR, indication of what had changed from the recirculated one. There was no...
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So what has changed, mainly for public?
Again, from our comments, from the areas that we had concerns the first time and we reviewed, we didn't see any changes that affected the concerns the city had. I didn't
So we have no
compare
new...
word to word.
Okay, so we have
so I'm
no
not
new
aware.
concerns based on any changes
That's
that they
correct.
made?
No new
Okay.
concerns, and the same concerns still exist.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for staff?
I have a question. When the traffic analysis was done, it mentions the agencies that it reviewed or that were considered as part of the analysis. It mentioned the county because of Cherry Valley, and that has jurisdiction over Cherry Valley. It mentioned Cali Mesa, but it did not mention Beaumont. Considering so much traffic in Beaumont goes from Tournament Hills, Fairway Canyon, up through Cherry Valley, up to the high school, considering so many Beaumont residents get off, and it's their only exit point actually off the highway pretty much to go to a big segment of Fairway Canyon as well as Sundance. Were you surprised that Beaumont was not even mentioned in the traffic study?
Usually, our consultants looked at this to make sure that the studies were technically sound, met the concerns of the community. So we do have a section on traffic that we felt weren't addressed in the traffic. Whether it mentions the city or not, I would hope that they would have looked at our general plan but ours is 10 years old. So it's hard for them to take those technical traffic studies and incorporate them into a 10-year-old. So, where or how it affects, whether it mentions us or not, I don't think that's necessarily a big concern of the city, as long as they're addressing legally all of the traffic concerns. Because once they address all the traffic concerns, we can see what the mitigation measures and then how that affects the city. It could affect the city if they address all of these corrected traffic discussions.
All right, thank you. And the traffic comparison, they used 2 cars as the equivalent of 1 truck, which to me was like saying 2 cats equals an elephant. So a truck is those semis, I'm not sure that that's because then it also looked, when I looked at the equations in the EIR, it looked to me like they were giving an awful lot of numbers to 2-axle trucks and not 3-axle trucks. Am I getting too specific?
Yes, I would have to refer back to a traffic engineer.
Everybody knows I read these.
Yeah, a traffic engineer would, make that call. Again, I had our consultant look at it, who has traffic specialists on staff, and did not, in their comments, did not necessarily make a finding that they felt that the whole calculation was not on par with a standard traffic study. But they did mention that it was, in the letter, we're saying you need to revise and recirculate the EIR in terms of traffic to have a corrected discussion of SB 743, which is a new way to measure traffic, a traffic transportation analysis consistent with SB 73, and guidelines distributed by the Office of Planning and Research. We feel that there's an analysis of the project's VMTs are needed, and I think that's a lot of what vehicle miles traveled. That's part of, the concern it sounds like you have, that we feel wasn't addressed significantly. So we've put that in our comment letter.
All right, good.
And last is proposed mitigation to reduce impacts from the project to a level of less than significant. So that wasn't in there for us to review, because those are the things we're saying you should put in the EIR and then recirculate it.
Okay. All right, good. And if we take this letter from the city, are we going to just attach that to the comments that we did before and resubmit it, or what's actually going to be mailed out, so to speak?
Yeah, we'll send this letter separately. So they'll have had the letter from the initial EIR and this letter regarding the recirculated EIR.
Okay. All right. Is that how we commonly do it, to recirculate EIRs? Because what I've heard is that you have to also put in there specifically that they didn't address what the prior comments were, and you have to word it a certain way. And Rebecca, you're the expert on this, not me. I'm just making sure we're doing it right.
We're telling them they need to recirculate the EIR with these new comments. We don't feel that this recirculated EIR was in response to comments. So it's a little bit of a different situation, that if we get another recirculated EIR that addresses the comments, then the comments would change a little bit to say, here's what was missed, or here was what we agree with or don't agree with in your discussions. But from my understanding and my review with the consultants, we don't believe that anything really changed from the original EIR to the recirculated EIR in the sections that we were concerned with.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It is also my understanding from the consultant that they should still be responding to the initial comments as well. But that's up for a whole different legal question. But best policy would to be respond to both the original comments on the draft EIR and the comments on the recirculated draft EIR would be best policies.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and open you did have a public comments on this? We'll open the public comment section at 6:52.
Bonnie Stewart?
Mayor, Council. I'm Bonnie Stewart. I'm the co-chair of the No Way Gateway Group. And I've read the proposed letter that responds to this recirculated DEIR. And I have to compliment the consultant that wrote this and did the research, because I really felt that they did a wonderful job. Our group agrees with this letter completely. We're very pleased that you did this, and we ask that you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Is that it?
No other speakers.
Okay, I'll close public comments at 7:53. Can I have a motion? Or, I'm sorry, is there any more comment on this? Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve double match invoice of 2016.
Nope.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter. What's that?
25.
Approves and authorize the mayor to sign the attached comment letter.
That motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll second that
I
motion.
apologize.
It's Monday.
Okay, Councilmember Martinez
I think it's Tuesday, Todd.
and Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. Now we'll move back to item 23, approval of a private placement financing plan and direction to city staff to prepare legal documents necessary to execute such plan for approval at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This really is kind of a bellwether night for us. We've been working on this project since I've been here, going on, gosh, I guess close to 7 months. Y'all been working on it a little bit longer, I know. We have our Cracker Jack consulting team with us again this evening. Katie Koster's with Piper Jeffrey. She's with their public finance division, and she's been helping us evaluate our options and get to market with our bid documents. Michael Bush is a CEO for Urban Futures, and again, Michael's been here. He was one of the first experts that you brought in when the city was really facing the worst of the situation, and so he's helped guide us through and helped us identify our options here. Brian Forbath with Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Roth. He's your special legal consultant, particularly on your debt issuance and your CFD administration and management. And Richard Wall with Webb and Associates, your special tax consultant. So we're here to present to you tonight what the results of the Phase 1 effort to refinance our CFDs look like. If y'all will recall, when we first started contemplating this, we looked at all the debt issuances that were there, all the CFD or improvement areas that were impacted by the various debt instruments that had been issued over the years. And then from there, we identified 15 which were possible targets for refinance. We talked about some policy guidelines with regard to what we would consider trying to refinance. And again, we established a floor of 3% minimum savings and as one key piece of guideline to look at. We also had a discussion with regard to some of the IAs being subject to 2% escalators as it applies toward the debt service portion of the special tax levies that occur within that area. So again, as I mentioned, there were 15 IAs that were subject to potential refinancing from the various instruments that have been issued. Out of those, 10 of those actually, after we got the bid results in, actually are ones that we would recommend that you proceed forward with. Tonight, we're looking for some direction for you. First of all, or from you, do you want to refinance these 10? Number one. Number two, with regard to the 3 IAs that really are eligible for 2% tax reduction or escalation reduction, do you want to look at an option for refinancing that looks at that? We bid those out with an option to keep escalation for those 3 versus level debt service for those 3. So you'll have some recommendations on that. The 5 IAs that we'll exclude from discussion and conversation. That also removes any potential IAs where any of the sitting council have conflicts. So the 10 that we're talking about, you do not reside in those. I don't think you own property or have an interest in those. Therefore, you have the opportunity as a body to be able to discuss those areas. I would request that you refrain from asking specific questions about your particular IA at this time, so we can address these as a body. So if you have any specific questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Foster to present to you.
I have a question for you. It's probably not real specific, but before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, you held a number of town hall meetings.
Yes.
And I'd sort of like to get from you a sense of, because we're going to be asked here whether we consider to eliminate 2% escalators. I don't think we're dealing with any of the pay-as-you-go tonight, correct?
That's correct.
And then, the purpose of those town hall meetings was to get a feel for the community on what direction they would like to send a message to us. So I'd like to see if you could just sort of summarize what you learned and give us some input.
A huge concern was the issue of the escalating payments for, we heard that pretty loud and clear. We also heard a lot of discussion with regard to the amount of savings that we're actually thought we could provide. And keep in mind that what we had presented were some conservative estimates. And so what we find in here is actually, in many instances, we actually received much better results than what we had hoped for. So we've been conservative in our estimates, and I think our results came back a little bit better. So I think, as you look at the opportunity for that 2% escalation reduction or elimination, you have the ability to be able to, I think, to deliver that and still reduce the current level of special assessments on average that people are paying. So I think, you're fortunate, or we were fortunate in the results that we got that were beneficial from step 1 and 2. And then, the other question really kind of centered around some of the other discretionary elements that we have. How much of the pay-go, can we eliminate? And we also had a discussion with regard to how much of the existing cash balances can we apply towards this particular effort to try to get as much savings as we can right now. So out of those three, we really can't talk about the pay-go too much tonight because that's going to conflict you out in some of that discussion. But those are things that we're looking at as the other side of this process. So I think with regard to those three issues that reply back to refinancing, I think we've hit the buttons on those. The other thing that we just concluded today is we had a SurveyMonkey instrument out there. And so that survey instrument talked about future facilities portions of these fees. And so we just literally, I got those handed to me tonight just before the City Hall closed at 5 o'clock. So I think we have about 100 or so respondents on that. So we're digesting that information. We'll be providing that to you, because that'll be important for you to consider as you look at some final decisions we have on July the 18th on your next meeting.
And Mr. Pinckney, maybe you can weigh in on this. You brought up the pay-go that we couldn't discuss tonight because my improvement area is a pay-go only. And so I just wanted to get that on the record that we're not going to be able to discuss the pay-go since we're not considering that tonight. Correct?
That's correct. And we've, just so you know, the approach that we've taken since these discussions initiated was for council members to step out of the room and recuse themselves on any issues that related to their improvement areas. We've sent a letter to the FPPC requesting their opinion on that approach. They had 21 days to respond. They didn't respond to our request for an opinion letter. We followed up with emails and phone calls. Haven't heard back from them. But to move cautiously, we want to avoid any discussion that impacts, specifically your improvement areas, because we don't want to create a conflict situation.
Okay. And Mr. Parton, you referred to this as phase 1. Can you sort of explain as best you can what the future phases will be after we do or don't do phase 1?
Sure. One of the there's a number of things that'll happen over time. The first is that The instruments that we're looking at now are what we call callable, which means that they're eligible for us to refinance and restructure that debt. Now, we're not restructuring in a way that's extending the term of that debt. We're working within the existing terms, so we're not extending out any new or additional years or time. We're not adding any additional amount of debt either. So we're simply trying to restructure for savings the existing principal that's the amount that's out there. There are additional instruments which will become eligible for refinance just like these are in the next year or two. And so we will continue to evaluate those. And so, we'll be looking at opportunities to refinance for savings. And if there are some of those additional IAs out there that have some additional 2% escalators, we'll look at ways we can try to address those as well on into the future. The other thing is we'll continue to look at PAYGO. There's some degree of discretion that council will have in setting these tax rates over time. And so we'll continue to really address and look at those over time as well. So there may be times where we don't specifically reissue debt for savings. There may be some discretion that council can consider on into the future where you have some limited areas of discretion. So I'm not suggesting we go through and necessarily cut tax rates across the board, but there are some levels of discretion that you have in terms of setting your rates and addressing some of these over time. So, we're at the very beginning of a very, very involved and ongoing effort, and there's a lot of care and attention that's got to be given into these CFD programs to make sure we're managing these dollars in the most expeditious way, and we're really being as conservative as we can with these dollars.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Pardon before we get the presentation? No, not yet. Do we have any public comments on this?
Not on this one.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Katie Koster. I'm a managing director at Piper Jaffray, serving as your placement agent on this transaction. Over the disclosures. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the placement process that we undertook, as well as our summary of recommendations, the specific results to property owners from those recommendations, and then a schedule that we would like to adhere to in order to be able to execute on the placements and get the savings on the rolls for the next fiscal year.
What's that deadline, do you know?
August 10th, I believe. All right, so starting with the placement process. As a part of your finance team, we began by soliciting bids from 63 separate banks to refund all of the 15 separate improvement areas on both a standalone basis as well as potentially pooling them for efficiencies. We also asked within the term sheet that was distributed to these banks to provide us with bids for both uniform savings and level debt service. So that would be in those specific cases where improvement areas currently had escalating debt service, and we wanted to look at a structure which leveled that out. We wanted to see if there was any differential in the bids for those alternative structures. We also wanted to make sure that we managed for the lowest cost of issuance possible. We also wanted to manage for minimal debt service reserve funds. So we asked specifically in the term sheet if there was flexibility to lower the amount of the debt service reserve fund required by the bidder. We also requested that all bidders provide us with any flexibility on optional callability. And that is what Todd had referred to earlier about the ability to refund those bonds in the future. Typically, it's a 10-year par call, so we asked if there was flexibility to make that shorter. We also asked about the ability to provide extended rate locks. And what that means is that we could get a bidder to provide the bid today and extend that specific bid for a period of time that would allow us to execute to closing and not worry about that bid floating with the market. We also wanted to assure that all of the bidders would be able to close under the aggressive schedule in order to be able to lock in the savings for the next fiscal year. And then importantly, we also wanted to make sure that each improvement area provided the minimum 3% net present value savings that's allowed for under the city's goals and policies. You'll see as we get into the detail that there is one instance where an improvement area is slightly below that 3%. And in this particular case, the finance team is recommending going forward with that one. And when we get there, I'll point that out to you and explain to you the reasons why we're making that recommendation.
Do you mind if I interrupt?
Not at all.
Can you explain maybe in an example with a single home what the 3% net MPV is that you're talking about? In other words, how does that 3%, is it related to assessed value, property value?
Sure.
Explain that for me, please.
So the 3% net present value savings really relates to the bond financing itself. So it's going to differ based on the size of the bond transaction.
Okay.
And it is the net present value of the cash flow savings for that transaction. And when we get into a specific instance, I will demonstrate that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So again, we went to 63 separate banks. Bids were submitted and analyzed by our firm. There were 5 banks that bid on the standalone improvement areas individually. There were an additional 3 banks that came together and bid on a pool structure together where they bid as one unit, taking down different tranches of the pool. We took the summary and analysis of those bids and we provided a detailed schedule of all of the different terms from each of the different banks and each of the different options, circulated them amongst the finance team, and had 2 separate conference calls to go through each improvement area, walk through the details, ask questions, and discuss what our overall recommendations would be. We tried overall to make sure that those recommendations were in alignment with your goals and policies and your objectives, including level versus escalating debt service, the 3% minimum NPV, et cetera. The results of those original recommendations ended up with 2 banks coming out ahead as the low bids. In both cases, in order to get the most improvement areas refinanced as possible, we ended up exceeding each bank's aggregate cap on par. And what I mean by that is Bank A had an aggregate cap of financings that they could do between 25 and 30 million. But when we aggregated all the information and where they were the low bid, and we mixed the improvement areas out so we could cover as many refinancings as possible, they were the low bid on in excess of that 30 million. And that was the case with both of the low bid banks. So we then went back to them and we asked if they could buy more, basically. Would they be able to meet those bids that they provided to us and actually do more debt? And in both cases, they agreed to do that, which will be a benefit to you because we were able to do more improvement areas with those 2 low bid banks. In one case, Bank A has already locked in their bid, and there is an extended rate lock for 60 days, which exceeds the amount of time we need to be able to execute and close. In the second case, recommended Bank B has gone through their credit approval and is ready to lock tomorrow if given direction by this council to approve the direction we're recommending to go forward. And they will also be able to close and execute in the time frame necessary to lock in the savings for next fiscal year. I'm very happy to say that the net result of our recommendations tonight will be over $32 million in savings to property owners in these 10 improvement areas, which far exceeds our original goals. And our recommendations will also lead to level debt service, as well as the rate locks that we had hoped to achieve. So in summary, I would say with your direction to move forward, we have exceeded our original expectations for savings to property owners. One of the areas that the council was very concerned about, as well as property owners through our meetings with them, were the costs of issuance. And so Michael Bush and his firm put together this summary sheet which shows what the average costs of issuance were for the prior improvement area financing, which is the $385,000 number. And I want to point out that that did not include the underwriter's discount, which would have been an additional 2% on top of that. In May, when we came to the council, we had estimated that the cost of issuance by doing the private placements would be approximately $180,000. Today, as I stand before you, we've been able to get that down to approximately $116,000. So again, definitely moving in the right direction with the direction that the council has given us.
And that is a per improvement area,
That
correct?
is per improvement area, correct. All right. So for the overview of the refinancing plan, again, originally we believed that we had 15 separate improvement areas and analyzed 15 separate improvement areas that were eligible for refinancing. Of those, we have recommendations to move forward with 10 of those improvement areas, which has an impact to over 6,000 separate parcels. 3 of those improvement areas have escalators today, which when we get into the detail, we'll be making the recommendation and showing you the differential between keeping the escalator and the level debt service. Those are improvement areas 6A1, 8B, and 19C. And that impacts over 1,800 parcels. We wanted to just give you an overview of a map of these 3 separate improvement areas that are currently impacted by the escalator. This is a map of improvement area 6A1, Seneca Springs. It has a total of 954 parcels. And improvement area 8B, which has 408 parcels. You would know this as the Sundance project. And finally, improvement area 19C, which is Fairway Canyons, which has 669 parcels. All right. So you may remember this chart. This chart basically looked at all of the 15 separate improvement areas that we originally included in the term sheet out to the bidders, and this just gives you some particulars about the year in which they were issued, the par amount outstanding, the final maturity, the original coupon range, as well as the call provisions. You'll note in that far right column, a column labeled parity debt. I want to point this out because it's important, in particular for improvement area 19C, 8C, and 8D. In the case of 19C, there is parity debt outstanding, so we're going to need to meet reserve requirements based on the existing indenture that's outstanding for that parity debt. In the case of 8C, similar situation. There's bonds that were issued in 2012 that are not part of our recommendations, and because we're leaving them outstanding, we will need to continue to meet the reserve requirement under those parity documents. And that is also the case with 8D. Additionally, improvement areas 8C and 8D have authorized but unissued debt that will come in the future. And therefore, these refundings will provide savings and lower the debt service. But we will not be able to actually lower property owners' special taxes until such time as all of the debt is issued.
All of the debt that is issued,
Up to the authorization amount for that particular improvement area.
okay, and is that debt being issued in your recommendations tonight?
No,
That is
it will be
separate.
future debt.
Okay.
So in summary, we have two banks that we're going to be making recommendations that you award to. The first is City National Bank. They have the lowest bid for improvement areas 8B, 14, 8, and 14A. You'll see on the sheet there, and I won't go into this in detail, the bids that they provided, the par amount of the new debt, and the gross savings. Important to note, I think, are the last two columns. Here we compare the net present value savings based on the actual bids versus what we had anticipated the savings would be when we met with you in May. And so you can see that in every case here, we were able to get substantially more savings in these improvement areas than we had originally thought. You'll also note that the total par amount for City National is 36 million and change. They had originally in their bid sheet said that their aggregate cap was 25 to 30 million, and we were able to get them to take more, which is definitely a benefit to the city and the property owners in these improvement areas. Some of the terms for City National include an origination fee of $10,000. However, they will not be charging any bank counsel fee. Across the board, their bid included a debt service reserve fund at 25% of maximum annual debt service. Originally, our term sheet anticipated a 50% reserve, so this was definitely more aggressive than we had hoped. They are providing an optional redemption in 8 years rather than the industry standard 10, which is, again, more flexibility. And they're also offering a 60-day rate lock, which was set in place the date that we received the bid. So it is exactly what you see on these sheets here today. And the 60 days will get us through the closing of the transactions.
And what is optional redemption? What is that?
So optional redemption is the term we use that refers to the time in which we can refund these bonds next.
Okay.
So bondholders, in this case, the bank, wants to know that they, those bonds will not be called away from them for a certain period of time. In this case, it's 8 years. As of 9/1 of 25, we will be able to refund these again if the economics are such that they're savings.
And many of the existing bonds are 10 years?
That's correct.
Okay.
The other low bidder was Western Alliance Bank. They actually were the low bid on 6 different improvement areas: IA8A, 6A1, 19C, 8C, 8D, and 14B. They offered a number of different options, which you'll see as we go through the details. I'll go over them just briefly now. You'll see what I refer to as uniform option 1. Uniform represents uniform savings, meaning that in the case of the improvement areas that have escalating debt service, we are continuing to keep escalating debt service and just applying the savings in a uniform manner. Option 1 versus option 2 refers to the rate lock. In option 1, there is a 2-week rate lock. In option 2, there is a 4-week rate lock. However, under the option 2, they wanted to charge an additional 5 basis points to have the longer rate lock. In every case, we are recommending the option one, which is at no cost to the city. We have had some preliminary conversations with the bank where they believe that they will be able to lock the rate this week and hold it through the execution 30 days from now, and may be able to do that for only 1 basis point. So that is something that we may want to consider, and they are being very flexible on reducing that rate. Other things to point out, again, NPV savings versus estimated savings prior. In every case here as well, we've been able to achieve greater savings than what we brought to the council in May. Specific to Western Alliance, as far as terms of bids, in this case, they had no origination fee, but they do have a $10,000 bank counsel fee. Their debt service reserve funds varied between 25 to 35% of maximum annual debt service. But I do want to point out again that in the case of 19C, 8C, and 8D, we have to use the existing parity debt reserve requirement because of the fact that there's other debt outstanding that we're not refinancing as part of this transaction. In this case, optional redemption is the standard 10 years. We talked a little bit about the rate lock, and again, in this case, their original aggregate limit was $50 million in par, and we got them to take $61.5 million. So again, in order to be able to effect the refinancing for more improvement areas, they were very flexible in that respect.
On the maximum annual debt service on the improvement areas you mentioned, so on the new loans, we have to keep that reserve for those areas. Is that correct? But we're not. We are not including those in the reissuance.
The new. I'm sorry.
Well, you brought up the debt service reserve fund of 25 to 35%, and then you said, but in those improvement areas that you mentioned.
Yes. So currently in those 3 improvement areas, they have a test which is the lesser of the 3 IRS tests. It's 10% of par, 125% of average annual debt service, or maximum annual debt service. So it's basically 100% of that 3-pronged test. The bid itself was at 25 to 35%, but in the cases of those 3 improvement areas, we have to keep it at the 100% because there's other debt outstanding that will be on parity. So even though the bid was lower in those 3 cases, we need to keep a reserve fund that's a little higher.
So there's some debt outstanding that we're not touching, and the other debt, the new debt, or I'm sorry, the refinancing of the debt has to have the same parity.
That's correct.
Debt service or reserve as the other one.
That's correct. And it only impacts those 3 improvement areas.
Okay.
So let's go through these in detail and specific to the results to the property owners. So starting with improvement area 8A. In this case, 2 banks responded, Western Alliance and City National. We talked a bit about the fact that Western Alliance provided the option of the 30-day lock, and City National's rate lock is for 60 days. We received bid rates of 3.79, 3.83, and 3.81 respectively, going from left to right. And you'll see here again that Western Alliance is referenced twice because they had the option 1 2-week rate lock and the option 2 30-day rate lock. The numbers in green are always going to be those that we are recommending because they are in fact the low bid. In this case, gross savings of $2.439 million, which represents about 11.64%. Again, prior, we had estimated savings of about 8.53%. We talked a little already about the differences between Western Alliance and City National with respect to the bank fee, the origination fee, the optional redemption, etc. This is a clear case where Western Alliance Uniform Savings Option 1 provides both the highest net present value savings and the highest gross cash flow savings. And if you look at that as a comparison of the annual levy, and I want to highlight that these averages that are projected include debt service, annual administration, and estimates for delinquencies, but they do not include PAYGO. Okay. So this chart shows you where the average tax levy per parcel is currently. That's the blue bar, and where it will be once we effect the refinancing, and that's the red bar. And that equates to roughly $332 on average annually per parcel savings. All right. I'm just going to pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions there before I move forward. No?
This one that you said showed here was improvement area what?
This is
6A.
improvement area 8A.
This first one that you showed us?
Yes, 8A.
And Is 8A one of those three maps we saw earlier? It's not, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Those three maps refer to the ones where we are going to be talking about level versus escalating debt service.
What I'm asking you is, if possible, when you know it, if you could tell us what area, what development, not other than just improvement area 8A, if you know it's section of Sundance, or, that would be helpful if you have it.
It's 8A is Sundance.
Perfect, okay. I just like,
Want to help me with that?
okay. Thank
So
you.
many different numbers.
I know. I just would like to get, anyone who's
Absolutely.
following this to understand what areas we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely. All right. Anything else on 8A?
And what's the term for 8A?
The term for 8A.
I mean, what's left on it?
34.
34. Is that, okay, according to that chart above. So all of these charts, is that going to be the term? And
Yes, that's
whatever's
correct.
At the end?
Yes.
All right, I think we're ready for 6A.
Right. All right. So 6A1 is one of the maps.
Okay.
And it is also one of the improvement areas where we're going to be looking at escalating versus level debt service. And it also is refinancing two separate series of bonds outstanding, and that is the entirety of the debt outstanding for this improvement. So a lot of different options here.
And Richard, 6A is Seneca Springs, okay? Thank you.
So you'll see across the top, we have 4 different bid options from Western Alliance Bank and 2 from City National. And so for Western Alliance, again, they bid both uniform escalating debt service structure as well as the level debt service structure. And then they also bid on both the 25-day rate lock and the 30-day rate lock. So I want to strip out the option 2 and set those aside, because in every case those were more expensive simply because you're paying more for that rate lock. And so what that leaves you with is uniform versus level. City National also submitted a bid for uniform versus level. In this case, Western Alliance, under their level debt service, provided both the greatest amount of gross savings at over $10 million and NPV savings of about $4.35 million, roughly 13.08%, as compared to 11.28%, which is where we were estimating it to be in May. If you look at just Western Alliance, escalating versus level, again, looking at the chart, with the final maturity being 9/1 of 34, you'll see the blue bar being where the average tax levy per parcel is currently. And then you'll see the red bar, and in this case, I should point out that the escalation only occurs until 2023 and then levels out. So you'll see that red bar basically mimics that structure. And then the yellow bar assumes that we level it out today and keep it level throughout the term. And so you'll see that while leveling out the debt service today means that there won't be as much savings day one to property owners as there is if we keep the escalator, that in 2023 you have a break even and the level actually provides slightly lower debt service than the escalator does. And in both cases, there is savings to the property owner. Okay? So in this case, you have roughly $250,000 less cash flow savings by leveling out, but you actually have, slightly less average annual savings. It ends up being, for the escalating, about $599 annually per parcel versus $584 if you level it out. It's very close. And so based on what we believe the goals and objectives of the council were and what we heard at some of the community meetings, we are recommending leveling this one out because of the fact that it's so close. And because in both cases, the property owners are still going to be seeing substantial savings day one from either of these options.
The savings difference between the red bar and the yellow bar, is that in here somewhere? Once after it's leveled out?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I didn't calculate that out, but it's pretty easy. It would probably be in the range of $50 a year after they level out as far as differential, with the level being less than the escalating. So right now, under the level, a property owner is going to be paying just under $2,600. They'd be paying about $2,300 under the escalator. But when they hit 2023, they're going to be paying about $2,600 under the escalator and maybe $2,550 under the level.
That one's interesting. So right away, though, the difference in the first couple of years is $300 extra. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The annual savings average per parcel would be around $300 right away. Additional, red versus yellow.
Yes.
So instead of dropping from 28 something to
25.5, you would be going down to 23.
So you'd be dropping 500 right away, and then it would be back up almost a little bit higher, $50 higher once it levels out.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And one thing that that I would like to point out on 6A1 is that City National actually had a slightly lower bid on this transaction, but it's a sizable transaction. It's over $30 million. And so because City National had the $25 million to $30 million aggregate cap, if we were to give this to City National, then they would not have been able to do any of the other improvement areas. So because Western Alliance was so close in their bid on this one, and they were the cover bid, we looked at keeping this for Western Alliance so that we could provide more savings in the other improvement areas in order to get more of the improvement areas done. So we were trying to not only manage low bids in some cases, but managing those caps.
Okay.
Any other questions on 6A1? Okay. Moving on to 19C, and that is Fairway Canyon. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I guess just the question would be, you know, while this one's still fresh in council's mind, do we want direction at this point in time about the level or escalating debt service on this one, just so we know where you want to go on that? Or we could take it all at the end, but I just figured since there's 3 of them before we get a couple improvement areas away.
I'm thinking if they're different situations, like I'm thinking the other ones don't have the debt service that levels out in 2022, that we should address these individually as we get through them. In the end, are we voting to approve something? Are we providing direction? What is our action on this? And are we going to be doing action on each individual bond issuance?
We will, you're not approving the issuance of any bonds this evening. We're presenting the plan. We're looking for direction to award the bids to Western Alliance. We're looking for direction in terms of how you want to structure the debt service on these 3 improvement areas. So when we come back to you at the next council meeting with the bond documents to be approved, you know, we're not making changes at the dais with you all. So that's the direction we're looking for.
So you're looking for consensus direction then?
Yes, correct,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, either one of you or both of you, I personally would want to be on the red line on this one. I don't know if that's where you guys would fall, but, you know, if it were me, I'd rather be on the red line, pay an extra $50 a year and get the, I mean, I'm still saving $600 over where I was before, right? Okay. So what do the rest of you think?
Well, I'm calculating it and to see basically you pay higher steady or you pay lower and it's still coming back up.
That's what I'm,
But the first 2 years, I'm saving $300, and the next 2 years, I'm saving another $200 a year on average.
Yeah, upfront money in the pocket.
Yeah.
The cash flow savings over the life of the bond, and let's assume you're a property owner. If you hold your property past 34, you're gonna save, the gross savings to the transaction is $260,000 if you go with the red line
Versus the green line.
versus the yellow line.
The yellow line.
Okay, that's escalating versus level. Just average annual savings is going to be greater under the escalating, not by much, but it's, you know, 598 versus 583, so it's $15 a year over the life of the bond that you're saving if you're doing the escalator. If you're planning on selling your home soon, you obviously want the red line because you're going to get the greatest savings tomorrow. And so, you know, I mean, honestly, when we were at the community meetings, we heard people both ways. Yeah. We had some that were very strongly one way and very strongly the other, and it really just depended on where you were. And I think this is probably the toughest of the 3 because it's the closest.
But it's also one where we can make the people who wanted to keep the escalator to lower their debt happy, as well as level it off going forward after 2022. So I don't know, what do the rest of you think on this one? I think this will probably be the hardest one for us to decide.
I would tend to think that the red line was better. Because I think a large number of people want the sure thing. And if you give them the savings up front, you give them the sure thing. And they look at it and say, I might be selling my house. And they look at it and say, I need some relief, so give me more money as fast as possible because I feel like you've been overdoing it for a while or whatever and not being as accountable as we should have been sometimes, or as reporting-wise. So I think that giving them the money up front, where the nexus is so close, would be good in this particular instance. Even though in most instances, I would say absolutely get rid of the escalator. I think this one is so close that the benefit to the people that actually live in those homes will seem much greater and be realized much faster on the red line.
It would also put more money in their savings early that would earn interest. I mean, if you want to look at the actual numbers of the whole thing.
As long as we communicate that it is going to be going up, because a lot of times you budget around a lower amount, and then when it goes up again,
That's the concern.
that's my only concern with it. I'm for the more savings up front. I think it's a good idea. I'm just afraid that as it goes up, there it goes again, and, you know.
Well, and I'm wondering if it's going to be confusing to people saying, well, they gave me this discount and now they're taking it back.
And it's going back.
And this was Fairway Canyon, right? Did we get a sense from Fairway Canyon that they knew that this was going to level out in
it's just
2022 already?
Seneca Springs.
This is
Seneca Springs. Did we get a sense from Seneca Springs that they knew this was going to level out, whether we did anything or not?
We, when we presented all of the improvement areas within that development, from my recollection, people were aware that there was escalating debt service. But I think one thing that maybe we haven't discussed, a lot of the dialogue focused on people either wanting to live here or wanting to leave. And the leave was because of the escalating debt service and their inability to buy a house or to sell it. And so I think that's something you might want to also take into consideration, that they were concerned that the escalating debt service over a period of time. I think this one truly is going to be the most difficult. The other ones are going to be a lot obvious, I think, what to do. This one, I don't think the group was too particular about the concern about the escalation because it's so short in time.
So they were aware of that.
Oh yeah,
the group.
I think all the areas were fairly much aware of it because we took
But I mean, they
ample
were
time to explain.
aware that it would level.
Oh yeah, yes. We presented a very similar chart to the group that was there, just like we did all the meetings we had. Every improvement area that you see tonight, a similar chart was shared with them that showed what we thought the savings was going to be. This is actually better than what we thought. Kind of as your advisor, I don't think there's one right approach to this. I think there's, as I think Katie pointed out, people wanted both. Just get rid of the escalator, save me some money now. It was really depending on what people's plans were. And what we heard from the meetings, people have different plan of tenure. We had young families that were in some of the meetings, and we had seniors that were in some of the meetings, and they were viewing a little bit differently. The one common thing I think we heard consistently, people feel like they're paying too much.
No
matter what we do.
To confuse things a little bit more, keep in mind, these numbers are averages.
Right.
So some people may see a lower number, some may see a higher number. But on average, you're talking about taking a nice receipt today, but you're going up on average about $100 a year for the next several years, on average. Some could go up higher. So, my recommendation to you is I would really look at the flat line, because I think that addresses the concern, that addresses the issue that's out there, and people know, we talk about prepayment, what do I owe, what's left. It becomes easier for people to understand, hey, I basically pay on average $2,600 and I've got 10 years left. So I think, to me, as I looked at this, I kept thinking about, in a recommendation to you, the budget, the concept that people could be to either side of this line significantly.
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure.
And I'm not sure who would answer this, but if you have it flat without the escalator and you decide to do an early payoff, does it make it any easier to calculate that early payoff? And would it save them, because we had talked about the cost to do that, would that be easier and therefore maybe more cost effective for the homeowner in the long run when they do that?
Not from the actual prepayment calculation. It's still the same procedure still is in place.
Okay.
I think you could clearly have a better understanding about what you owe. If you know, I've got really a flat payment and I know I've got 10 years left on it, you can run the math pretty quickly and understand where you are.
So two things I'm thinking of, sorry, Mayor. One is families can budget around estimate that they know is going to occur, and the other is our promise was to try to remove the escalator, and that would be consistent with our direction. Those are just my thoughts.
I'm good with the level. Is anyone have an objection to the
No,
level?
I agree.
Okay.
No, I'm okay with it. The other thing too is that if we single out one group and treat it differently, it's going to be really difficult to communicate that message. So if it's that close, and and I agree with you on the budgeting, I think going level.
So on this one, we're giving you direction to go level, the yellow line. Okay.
Moving on to 19C,
That is
Fairway Canyon.
Okay.
This is the second of the 3 improvement areas that has the escalator. And again, you had the 2 same banks bidding here, Western Alliance and City National. Again, I would say we dropped out option 2 from Western Alliance because the added 5 basis points eroded the savings to the point where those 2 options didn't make sense. And the low bid did end up being, again, Western Alliance under the level debt service option. This is also one where, I think I referenced it before, where we are assuming 100% debt service reserve fund. So had we been able to use the 35% that was bid, the savings would have been even greater, but because of the parity debt, we need to stay at the 100%.
How long would we have to keep that throughout the issuance, or throughout the term of this bond?
Unbeknownst to Ms. Coster, we looked at that issue earlier today, and there may be a possibility, we're still exploring it, whether or not we really have to fund the 100% reserve. I'll know more later tomorrow. We can talk about tomorrow, but there might be a chance to fund at a lower level.
Okay.
And so if we can, we're obviously going to do, if we can do better than this, we're going to do whatever we can to try to enhance the savings. But it's something we looked at in terms of the existing documents, and we think that there's a fair argument that we don't need to fund it at the higher level. And when we come back to you to approve the transaction, we'll clarify what the reserve fund level is on those deals. Oh, the reserve funds have to stay outstanding through the end of the bond deal. Okay. So what happens is essentially on the very last bond payment, whatever's in the reserve fund, assuming it hasn't been drawn down, acts as a credit to the last levy of the last year. So in other words, if there's 25% of the debt service is there, you only have to levy taxes to make up 75% of the debt service in that last year.
Okay.
100%.
So this one is a fairly straightforward one. You can see from the chart that for the 669 parcels that are in this improvement area, they're currently paying an escalator, and you can see that represented in the chart by the blue line. The red line represents the escalating debt service structure where we would uniformly distribute the savings. And then the yellow line represents the level debt service. And it's quite clear here that the level debt service provides not only the greatest gross savings by almost $1 million, but also much greater average annual savings of about $649 per year per parcel, as opposed to $571.
Okay, and that's Fairway Canyon, correct?
That is Fairway Canyon.
Okay. I'm in favor of the yellow. Anyone object? All right.
We tried to make that one easy for you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to improvement area 8B, Sundance.
Okay, and this is a small section, a very small section, relatively small section of Sundance, correct? Do you know how many total parcels are in 93-1?
Total parcels 93-1, I'm going to guess about 15,000. I think last time we looked, it is north of 10,000.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Again, similar situation, 2 bidders, Western Alliance and City National. In this case, City National actually provided the lowest interest rate, providing the greatest gross savings and greatest net present value savings. 8.13% is the anticipated amount as compared to 5.36, which is what we presented to you in May.
What area was 8B again?
Sundance.
Okay, thank you.
It's like the southwest corner of Sundance, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, this one, as you can see from the graph, also has a situation that we saw in 6A1 in that the level debt service does not provide as much savings today. But different from 6A1, it does over time provide greater savings than the escalator does. I mean, you can see where that break even occurs around 2026, 27. But in both cases, again, you have immediate savings to the property owners. In the case of the level debt service, about $634 on average annually.
And I notice on all of these there, your footnote number 1 talks about it does not include a pay-go component. Does that mean that these improvement areas would not have any pay-go going forward?
What that means is that if the council were to choose to not levy all the pay-go, there would be opportunities for further reductions potentially.
Okay, so this is taking into account.
This is just
keeping
debt service.
some portion of pay-go for these improvement areas.
This is assuming that you're going to levy pay-go at the current level that you've been levying in the past, and so the only reduction relates to pure debt service savings from the refunding.
But if we had decided to drop pay-go across the board 50% or something, I'm just throwing out a hypothetical.
The savings would go higher.
Okay.
The levy, not necessarily the savings would go higher, but the levy on the property would decrease even more.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me rephrase it. These numbers in all of these tables do not show or account for any pay-go that is levied on top of it. So when you look at the blue bar, which we're calling the current levy, if in this particular improvement area you're also levying pay-go, today it wouldn't be $2,500, it might be $3,000. We've just stripped out any pay-go as a part of this analysis. So if you kept the pay-go in the future the same as it is now, the relationship would stay the same as here because we're only comparing, in this case, debt service, admin, and delinquencies.
So the net payments under all 3 lines would be increased by the same percentage or
Yeah,
the same.
If the pay-go was consistent, the relationship is consistent.
But if, as Brian said, if we did decide to lower pay-go for whatever reason, then the net savings would be greater.
It could be greater, yes, but what you're not seeing here is what you're levying for pay-go now.
Right.
Right.
But it wouldn't, lowering pay-go would not ever decrease the savings that the homeowners are getting.
Not for these components.
Okay.
Only for
Okay.
pay-go.
No negative impact.
I got to re-clarify this for me, if you would. So where you begin in this particular example, on the blue line on your graph, if it does not represent a pay-go component in that blue line currently.
Correct.
But if it did, the relationships of the lines would remain the same. It's just that where they are on the graph would change.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. So I guess we're just looking for direction from you as to your preference to escalating or level.
Level.
Yeah, I think with the other issues we raised as far as budget and everything else, I think we're all in agreement on the yellow.
Okay.
A level debt service.
Okay, excellent. All right, moving on, improvement area 14. Oak Valley Estates.
Okay.
So Mayor and Council, just to clarify, so improvement area 14 is the Oak Valley Estates, but it also has an overlay of improvement area 14A, 14B. So they'll be covered in subsequent slides here, but just for the council's reference, 14A is the Solera community as well, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with.
And you're not in any of those improvement areas?
I'm in Solera.
You know
So,
which improvement area?
yes, I believe 14C, which is the overlay segment that's over by Brookside. Is that correct, Richard? So,
So there are 3 improvement areas that overlay the same property.
Right.
So in its entirety is 14. There's another section of 14A, which is Solera, which encompasses basically the central portion and then the northwest portion. And then there's 14B that has a small sliver, and I know this really means nothing to you what I'm doing with my hands, but the northwestern is a small like hockey stick shape, and then it's mostly
Right.
the eastern side is 14B. So
if I look at my bill, I see 14A and 14C.
There's no C, so you've probably seen the services. There's because there's
Okay,
a
I'm
services
sorry,
tax as
the
well.
services.
Yeah. So if you see,
So
if you
this does relate to me. So
It
should
does.
I leave?
Yes.
Because you're talking. Okay. Nobody had left yet, so I just wanted to make sure.
Actually, this is 14, not 14A, so.
So it encompasses.
It encompasses.
Yeah,
all
it
of them.
encompasses the whole thing.
Great. All
I
right.
apologize to you.
I got your back, Tess.
Thank you.
Well, this one's a pretty easy one here.
Okay, so in this case, we see a couple of different new banks.
I
I'm
need
sorry.
to stop for a second. Go ahead and raise your question with Ton, because I'm not sure that
I know
matters.
that we're working not to cover any of the areas that any of the council members reside in. Is Councilmember Roscoe in any of the areas that we've already covered?
He would have been in Fairway. I think he
So-
would have been in
So-
the 19s.
Can we do that one? When we,
Well, he's not here. His lawyer has sent a letter to the city saying that he's taking an extended leave, so he's not participating in the decision-making process.
We would have just had him leave the room.
We would have had he been here, we would have had him recuse himself.
thank you, I was just checking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so in improvement area 14, we see a couple of new bidders, Umpqua Bank and BBVA. They were part of the initial 5 that submitted bids. Unfortunately, City National still was very aggressive across the board. And again, in this case, was the low bid, providing about 1.4 million in gross savings and 5.18% NPV savings, as opposed to the estimated savings prior of 1.51%. The prior debt service was level in this case, or generally level, and so we applied the uniform savings structure. In this case, again, the graph shows the average tax levy per parcel currently versus what it will be on the level basis, and the difference is roughly 49.75 per parcel annually. Any questions on that one?
Nope. I think obviously the lower, right?
It's hungry.
Good call.
She's got no conflict. The other one is 14A, right?
She's in the area that's closest to Brookside, where you're talking about. Okay.
We'll stop when we get there, yeah. All right, improvement area 14B, Oak Valley Estates. All right, in this case, again, Western Alliance and City National bid. This improvement area is currently paying level debt service, and so there were 2 options under Western Alliance. Again, we're throwing out option 2, the more expensive of the 2 options. And when comparing Western Alliance to City National, Western Alliance was the clear low bid with gross savings of about $456,000 and NPV savings of 2.56%. This is the improvement area, the only one that we're recommending to you that had NPV savings of less than 3%. If you look at the next slide, the reason why we are recommending that we include it is that we are able to achieve roughly $73 and change of average annual savings per parcel, which is actually in excess of what we were able to provide on the last improvement area, primarily because despite the fact that the NPV savings is less, you're spreading that savings between less homeowners over a broader, a larger par amount. And so we still feel that $73 per year is a significant enough amount that property owners would like to see the savings. And so it was the group's decision to make this recommendation to you. Playing devil's advocate, the reason not to do it would be that by going with this particular bank, which is Western Alliance, you are locking out a future refinancing for 10 years. And if you were to not move forward on the transaction today, there may be another opportunity in a year or two to do this financing under either a public option or a private option at lower interest rates. And I think, this is really more of a matter of, where do you think interest rates are going to go over the next few years, and what are the trade-offs, $73 today or potentially greater savings in a couple of years.
Is one of these values in your tables here represent a relationship between the cost of issuance and the total gross savings?
The cost of issuance is included in the savings, so this represents savings after payment of those costs of issuance, so you're not eroding any of the savings because of the cost of issuance.
And one of my questions that I had for later, but I'll bring it up now just for clarification, the cost of issuance of 116 is that an average per, or is that the cost for each improvement area?
That is the cost per improvement area. And Mike, I don't know if you want to talk to that specifically.
So as you talk to this specifically, Michael, 116,000 to have a gross savings of 456, and also if you could address whether or not waiting a couple of years, not knowing what interest rates are going to do, whether we could get a better savings in phase 2 or phase 3 of what we're doing.
Right. I couple things. In regard to the 116, it's actually a little bit lower than on average. After the bids came back and we saw that each of the banks had their requests for their counsel fees, Brian and I had a conversation which we shared with Katie. Katie then called the banks and asked if they can consider kind of lumping that together. So I think overall over the 10 deals, we should save about another 50,000 from that average of 116.
Total.
50,000.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll save another 15 or another 50. Candidly, Mayor, we didn't really look at each improvement area in relation to the cost of issuance because we hoped we would get these pooled bids. And what happened was when the banks decided to pool, they pooled with another bank, not necessarily the improvement areas. And so when they pooled with banks, the rates came in higher. And so the individual banks, specifically Western Alliance, although they were part of a pooled bid individually lower than they bid in their pooled bid.
Okay.
So from that perspective, now going forward, I think as Katie's pointing out, we don't know where rates are going to go. I think I've been wrong a couple times in the last year by saying, well, rates can only do one thing when they're at historic lows is go up. And what they've done is gone up and then come right back down. We kind of went back and forth on this one. This, to me is more of a bird in hand kind of scenario, but obviously the council can make a determination. One thing to pay attention to, the shorter the term, meaning this one only goes out to 32, it's a little shorter than the other ones. The par amount is fairly low. When the par amount is fairly low and the term gets shorter, it's harder to do a deal in the public market. The cost of issuance in the public market in comparison to what we see in the private is a lot higher.
Okay. And while we're on the subject, and you're right there, just when I saw the 116 versus 500 and something for what we have done in the past.
385.
Was it 380? 385. Okay.
And that does not include the underwriter's discount, which Katie had mentioned was 2%. It's 2% of $260 million. It's $5.2 million more that would be added to that average.
Okay. So when I remember looking at the cost of issuance forms for the old CF for 93-1 before I was on council, I don't remember seeing a total of about 300. Was some of it being hidden in other?
Remember, there were two. They had a cost of issuance on the CFD side and a cost of issuance on the authority side. When you add them together.
Okay, so that's why when I was just looking at either or, I wasn't looking at them combined.
They charge both sides.
Okay.
Plus on the underwriting aspect of it, it was $20 a bond. Every bond, no matter when they did it, from the 93-1 first deal to that last deal they worked on, they've always charged the same amount.
$20,000.
$20 per bond, which is maybe double what the average probably would be, or close to it now, what you would normally see in the market.
Okay, and you're charging your cost of issuance on one side as opposed to CFD versus?
Yeah, these are all just a straight flat fee, private placement, direct charge, cost of issuance from the city CFD side. There's no financing authority, second charge. We're not doing that. This is a straight direct loan with the bank.
Okay, so in the past, the CFDs were issued and then purchased by the finance authority, correct?
Yes.
Will we be doing that?
No.
We are not doing that.
We are not doing
it. And that was where the second cost of issuance came in.
Yeah, part of this discussion, and we're not getting into it quite yet, but we think in addition to the structure, I think there's going to be some a reduction in administrative responsibilities for the city manager staff to administer, because they're straightforward. There's no additional compliance requirements required, at least not yet, from the banks. There's not two sides of the books to manage with the trustee. This is going to be pretty straightforward.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mayor,
Sure.
Michael, if we were to pull out, would that change Western Alliance's bid in any way? I mean, since it would pull out of what they bid on.
No, I don't think it would hurt the bid themselves. Again, I think they know the standard is 3%. I don't think it would surprise anybody if the council decided not to go forward. I do think, however, given that we've come this far with the transactions and not, I feel kind of challenged here that I'm advocating for my own position, having worked on this deal, but there's just no guarantee going forward you're going to get a better deal.
Right.
And that's the one thing that concerns me when we've gone this far. We've had the meetings. We've come this far along. The rates could go up, and it could be that there's zero savings going forward. And that's the one thing that worries me, and that's why I suggested to the team, let's present it to the council and see really how they feel about it. I don't think that we have a position one way or the other. We wanted to add it in for that purpose. There were a couple other ones that weren't close that obviously we left out. This was the one that I think when we projected it, it was like 1.5%. We didn't expect it to even be this close to 3%.
And did you get any sentiment from the town hall regarding this one specifically? Like,
No, I think, Mr. Mayor, generally speaking, people just wanted to see a reduction.
Okay.
And the elimination of the escalators, if that was possible. That was pretty common.
Okay.
I think in Sundance, really the discussion was about the PAGO side and how their dollars are being accounted for and how they're being deployed, whether they're being utilized to provide the services within their subdivision.
Okay.
I think that was really kind of the bigger question there.
The other thing, Ms. Mayor, is the one before, there's a $49 savings, and this one's a bigger savings, and how do you explain moving forward with one and not moving forward with larger savings? It's just difficult.
I understand. The other one, though, the payments were about half of what these payments are.
Good point.
But I agree. I think we should, I'm in favor of doing this one just for the savings.
I agree also.
Okay.
All right, improvement area 8. Sundance. All right, and here again, we see the same three bidders, Umpqua, City National, and BBVA. Again, City National came in with the most aggressive bid. They provide 1.8 million in gross savings, 4.32% NPV savings. Just as a check, the estimated savings prior were less than 0.5%. So again, a significantly better savings than we had anticipated. Prior debt service was level in this case as well, so uniform savings is the structure we chose. This impacts 944 parcels, and here average annual savings per parcel is roughly $126 per year. And again, we thought this was a fairly straightforward recommendation.
I agree.
And moving on, we're now on at 14A. And I believe this is for Solara.
14A? Is that what you said?
Sorry,
Yes,
you on
so this
14?
is, yes,
I
sorry.
was just looking back at something else. Okay.
See you in a little bit.
You could read.
Sorry, we probably could organize these better.
No, that's fine.
Okay. 14A, this one's a little bit more interesting. Only two bids, Umpqua and City National. In this case, Umpqua actually provided slightly higher gross savings. That's the cash flow savings on a year-to-year basis. But the net present value savings from the City National bid was higher. This was because of the differences in the terms provided in the term sheet bids provided by the bank. So for Umpqua, they actually had a higher interest rate at 3.66% as opposed to City National's 3.52%. But they recommended a debt service reserve fund of only 10% of max annual debt service as compared to 25%, which is where they achieved the greater gross savings. However, Umpqua was going to charge $10,000 for origination fees as well as a $10,000 bank lender's fee, as opposed to only $10,000 from City National. And City National also provided the 60-day lock, which is very advantageous, particularly in a volatile market where things can bounce around a little bit. So because of this, and because of the fact that we were only estimating about 3% savings, and City National provides almost 6.5%, we are recommending City National as the low bid. There are 1,255 parcels impacted in this improvement area, and the average annual savings per parcel is just under $140 per year. And that is with the City National bid.
And the rate lock, if rates go down, are we locked into a higher rate?
Yes, we are locked into the rate that they've provided
Okay.
as of the date that the bids were due.
Okay, and before I forget, I think someone mentioned there was about total 6,000 parcels that we're addressing here.
That's correct.
I think it'd be good if we could refer to a percent of the total CFD bondholders, what that is. I think that'd be helpful. Number of people that will be affected, number of lots, yeah. So I think we're all good on this one?
Yeah.
Follow your recommendation?
We're getting close, only two more. And they're the easy ones.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question. I don't want to send her back out of the room, but the people who are in 14 and 14A will be getting both the savings, correct? Okay, thank you.
All right, improvement area 8C. This is one of the improvement areas where there is outstanding parity authorized but unissued debt, and in this case, other parity debt outstanding, the 2012 Series A bonds. We only received one bid on this transaction, and it's likely because of the fact, well, actually, no. I was going to say it was because of the longer term, but it's actually not as long as some of the others. But so Western Alliance clearly is the low bid, and again, we're looking at option one as providing the greatest savings. Pretty substantial savings in this case, close to 21%. Net present value savings, $2.7 million. And again, just as a note, the savings will not be going back to the property owners until such time as all of the authorized debt is issued. This is the part of the project.
Now, this one is still going to have the escalator, correct?
Correct. This one will continue to have the escalator. Now, one of the things that can be considered as you're moving forward on the future debt that is authorized but unissued is we use the term a wrap structure, whereby when you issue the future debt, you can wrap that debt service around the existing debt service and in effect level out the debt service when that debt is issued. And that's something that I'm sure we'll discuss more when we're looking at structuring that new money transaction.
Where was this again? 8C?
Sundance.
Now, do we know on this one whether or not there is more projects, infrastructure that require us authorizing more debt?
Yeah, this is one of the ones that's addressed in the party settlement agreement that we entered into, the city entered into. So this is one that the city will be issuing some additional bonds for.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the full authorized limit?
I don't know for sure about that yet. It'll depend on the facilities and everything to be financed. But there's, I will tell you, it's a substantial amount of bonds still to be issued.
Okay. Sorry. This, for example, the current 750, that is the folks who live in this improvement area are paying what the full authorization of the debt would be, correct?
Currently, yes.
So they're not paying 750 and are going to be paying 550 after this is done. They're paying 750. They're just saving 200 off of their total amount that they're paying now.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, yeah, and it's really more a capacity for future debt that is being shown here, because again, this is just the debt service component. So if we're actually levying at the maximum special tax, which includes the pay-go.
Okay.
This is again just representing the debt service for this issuance.
Okay. Any objections to this recommendation?
No.
All right.
All right, and finally, 8D, also Sundance, and also part of the party settlement agreement. Again, in this case, we only had Western Alliance bid, and the results of this were our recommendation for option one, which provided $428,000 in gross savings, or over 30% net present value savings. And again, you can see here the savings or additional capacity created here of roughly $104 per parcel on average. And there are only 187 parcels in this improvement area.
Okay. We've been going for about 3.5 hours, the four of us. Is it a good time to take a break here?
One last slide.
We're almost.
Quickly go over the
Okay.
schedule and then take a break.
Okay.
All right, so the majority of the schedule is in fact complete. We've gone through, of course, the community meetings, distributing the term sheet, getting the bids, doing the analysis of the bids, and then coming here for direction. After tonight, the banks are due to complete their credit work. I have gotten a notification from Western Alliance Bank that they have received full credit approval. I've also spoken to City National, and we have provided them with all of the documentation that they need to get credit approval, so we expect that this week. Again, City National has already locked their rate in, and Western Alliance is prepared to lock their rate in this week with the direction from the council. We would be bringing back all of the documents to the council for formal approval on July the 11th, and the levy would be being reviewed on July the 18th. Once we've locked in the rates and rerun numbers, we are in a position to provide those numbers to Webb so that they can get those on the tax rolls for next year. We're looking at finalizing all the documents and closing in 2 waves, with the first wave being with the 6 improvement areas with Western Alliance and a July 27th close, and then following up with the last 4 improvement areas with City National on August 8th. We're doing that in order to lower the negative arbitrage associated with the longer escrow, and because their locks, the City National locks a little longer, so we want to take advantage of that longer lock and lower the negative arbitrage. And that will still allow us to do the call on September 1 and lock in all the savings for property owners for this next fiscal year. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd, the July 11th, July 18th, is that the schedule? We weren't going to have one on the 11th, were we?
Right.
I think that July 18th is sort of what I think that that just hasn't caught up to that acknowledgement that there's not a July 11th. If we come for approval on the July 18th, that will be fine in order to meet our schedule as well.
Okay, so we don't need to have that meeting on the 11th then?
Correct, yeah.
Because I think our first meeting would have been July 4th.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan would be to come approve all the documents July 18th, have the first closing on July 27th for the Western Alliance transactions, and then to close the following week on the City National transactions.
Okay, and Rich, these changes will all be on the next property tax bill coming in.
That is correct.
So 2018 or the end of the year?
So it'd be going into the county auditor August of this year, and it would show up on the December 2017, April 2018 property tax rolls.
Okay.
And so what we'll be doing, working in tandem with Katie, is to get the debt service schedules that are perceived to be finalized, and we'll create those taxes using those with the budget, and we'll come back on the same day to July 18th to approve those. So council will be presented with what those final numbers would be, and there'll be a resolution that will be brought forward, and then we'll use that to do the actual enrollment.
And have you already started on the debt service on the other parcels or the improvement areas we're not talking about tonight?
Correct. So we have that information. That will not change. The only variable for all of the improvement areas that have PAYGO is just that final determination as to what percentage will be included in that calculation for the levy.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Any comments?
I was going to say, if this goes through, we'll create a rock band in Beaumont called Optional Redemption.
Been waiting all night for that, huh?
I have. It's a good one.
So let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 8:35. All right, call back to order at 8:38. So we'll move on to item number 24, addendum to the Joint Powers Agreement of the Western Riverside Council of Governments, adding the City of Beaumont as a member agency.
This is the next action that council needs to take upon approval of this addendum, which would again amend the Joint Powers Agreement with WRCOG. The city really will be eligible to become a regular member of the Council of Governments again. So this is really a good step forward in this, in our resolution with WRCOG, and brings us back into our regional community as community members. So recommendation would be to approve the joint powers agreement. If y'all do approve it, we get it executed, we'll get it on over to WRCOG, and then really administratively, they'll accept that, and we'll be members again.
Are there any questions or comments are there public comments on this?
No comments.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this? Before we, you had mentioned, John, that there was something on that last, I think it was page 22, it just.
Yes, if this addendum is, if the council authorizes the mayor to execute the addendum, then the joint powers agreement would change, and that's something that could be raised at the first executive committee meeting to change the original member agencies. It has City of Beaumont listed with the, in parentheses, withdrawn, and of course it would be City of Beaumont, and it wouldn't indicate that we were withdrawn anymore, since we would be back in the regional program. And the mayor is the member of whoever the mayor of the city is, serves as the executive committee member, and then you'll need at some point to choose an alternate to attend the executive committee meetings. And whoever is going to attend could raise that at the first meeting, that they'd like to make sure that that is adjusted to reflect that we're a current member in the agreement.
Okay. So if there's no questions or comments, then I move to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the attached addendum to the JPA of the Western Riverside Council of Governments.
I'll second.
Flip a coin.
We'll give it to, I think Mr. Martinez beat him out.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And do we have a volunteer for the alternate to the executive committee?
I'd like to volunteer.
Anybody else? You got enough on your plate? Okay. So we'll make Mr. Lara as the alternate. And now we'll move on to item 26. That is the summer concert.
Won't happen. What you have before you tonight is one night, one band, one great venue. We have an opportunity to host. You like that, didn't you? It was catchy.
I do.
Host a summer concert this year. Looking at how we've done it in the past, and as you know, as council, we've done about 10 years of these. Bring it back slowly, bring it back baby steps. We have an opportunity with the booking company to charge a gate. We haven't had that opportunity in the past. Roughly, we're looking at a $5 gate, 10,000 people, $50,000. I honestly think you're going to get more than 10,000 people, but I want to hold at that number, and that's a $50,000 revenue. I put the $70,000 in the staff report because I just wanted to probably look at the highest number possible. I don't want any surprises. I want the council to know that what this could end up costing. Heaven forbid something happens and we're stuck with a concert in a thunderstorm, or we're stuck with certain things that we can't control. So I wanted to be upfront with that. We will do pre-sale tickets. We'll get the amount in as soon as possible. On something like this, if it is approved tonight, we will probably lock in the band tomorrow, put out for bid immediately the production, and move forward with the event. Press release it next Monday, and put those tickets on sale probably July 3rd, and we'll also be selling them at the July 4th event. Large national acts have commented that they would like to come back to Beaumont. We're still on the A list with a lot of these bands based on the way it was, the venue set up, and just the way the atmosphere was here when they came through here in the last 10 years. So we have an opportunity to try it and see how it goes. Again, I think it's a good thing to give back to the community. It was very successful in the past. It was just expensive, as we all know. And that's kind of where I am with this, and like some direction if you'd like me to move forward with this and get this put together. I can speak about the date. We're going with an August 2nd date because we're trying to get this done before school starts. Beaumont Unified likes to start school extremely early, and I believe it's the 9th, and that also affects our pool and everything in town we do. But By going on the 2nd, it's a Wednesday night. We were very successful with the Wednesday nights. Again, you catch the bands en route. And what that means is we're not paying fly days. We're not paying extra money to bring them exclusively here on their highest paid nights, which is a Friday or Saturday night. So on a Wednesday, bands are cheaper. Again, they're en route somewhere else usually.
Ms. Carroll, you had some questions?
Questions?
I have a couple. The $5 fee, is that regardless of age?
Something like that, usually go 3 and older.
Okay.
On something like that, you know,
Sure.
Council can tell me we're going to go older, set a different age bracket, but three and older usually works. And you're going to have some people that are going to stand outside the venue and watch it just because that's the way they want to do it. But I think you're got a solid core in there at $5.
I think you should keep it simple with this short amount of time. And when you say, you know, 10,000, 50,000, if you got 50,000, does that reduce from the 70,000 to where?
Correct.
Then the cost is 20? Okay.
Correct. And I can honestly tell you that just the few feelers I've put out there, that 70 shot really high.
Okay.
So just to be honest with you.
Window is really short, and I realize that you may have some relationships with some of the entertainment where they want to come back again. Are we going to be able to get really competitive pricing on the production because of the short window?
Production's not
Are we
a,
gonna end up with just a couple of
I'm
people?
sorry. Yeah, production's not really an issue because, again, you're a Wednesday night. When I put the July 4th production bids out there, I made a comment to the companies that shot the bids back. All 3 were California-based. I know that there was an issue in the past of using a Las Vegas company when we have California-based companies. But I will tell you that the Las Vegas-based company normally would come in cheaper. They chose not to bid the July 4th event, and they're not going to bid just a single summer concert. So the 3 we've reached out to for the 4th said they'd be very interested in a summer concert. Again, it's Wednesday night, so that's usually a down night for them too.
Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, so I've got 2 concerns. One, the price tag and the Wednesday night. So, first of all, you've said that we've done this in the past on a Wednesday and it's successful.
Correct.
So you're confident that a Wednesday night with food trucks and stuff, which seems like an all-day event, would be able to bring in working families and so forth on Wednesday?
Yeah, like again, the chamber did handle a market night with the summer concerts, and it was very successful. Annie can attest to that. She was involved with a lot of that with the chamber, and even though they're only there for 4 or 5 hours, very successful.
Okay, and then on the price tag, I don't know. It's a big number. I know you went high. I know you went high because you wanted to make sure that you covered all bases and stuff. And if we go down 30, 40 grand, I mean, are we willing to absorb that? Do you have that in the budget, or are we looking at pulling it out of? I think this is a great idea. I want to approve it. I think we need it. I think it's great for the community to have something positive. I'm just a little doubtful, but, I'm willing to give it a shot. I have full confidence in you and your abilities. I'm just a little concerned about it falling short and how. I don't know if I'm willing to take that big of a gamble, but if my council feels it's worth the risk, then I'll support it.
Mr. Lara?
First off, I really like the idea, Bob. Thanks for going through that trouble. Do we have this money? I don't recall. Do we have this money set aside in fiscal 17-18 already?
Yeah, we would do a budget amendment to be able to provide for that, right? So we've got some additional TOT revenues that we don't have budgeted. So, so you've got some additional head and bed sales tax dollars that are there.
Okay. I like that. Really like the food truck idea. Would they be buying in other words, paying the city to be a part of this event?
What we would set it up as we've done with the July 4th event, we'd charge them a $100 vendor fee.
Okay.
And we also would have other vendors that wanted to come also.
Okay.
Not necessarily food, but the food I would like in the catering trucks because I think it's a unique idea.
Yeah.
We tried to kick it off this year, and I want to do one yearly, but if we could tie it in with this, then it makes it fantastic for both sides.
And again, that also,
That would come in to help offset this.
right. And does this in any way assisting the chamber with a fundraiser at all, or this is strictly?
Not this year,
Okay.
Councilmember Lara. Again, like I said, we got, and not to, I know we're changing events here, but we basically got handed that July 4th event rather quickly.
Okay.
And we're putting that together. We changed it to a Freedom Festival, but with the help again of Annie, she's been volunteering and helping Heather get this thing set up, and we appreciate her help. We're going to have semi-market night for the July 4th event. We're just going to kind of roll that into this event, and then if we do decide to do these next season, we definitely could talk and meet with the chamber.
Okay.
Because again, the original thing with these concerts was to have the chamber do these concerts. We were trying to get
Right.
out of this business completely. But if we can self-fund them or come pretty darn close, and
Right.
I'm going to be very advocate that we keep a hold of them and make it our events. But there's several different ways we can do it.
And my last question is, I know this is a small window for you, but have you been able to check for any sponsors?
No, we'll reach out as soon as we lock in the band.
Okay.
Again, like that, and some people do debate this, but certain bands only allow certain sponsors. I know we had a Disney group out here one year, and they only allowed Coke products, no Pepsi. So we got to look at certain things when we get to that. But we will reach. Again, it's a short window to reach for this one, but we'll try.
Okay. Well, and thank you, Annie, for your assistance on that. I appreciate that. That's all I have.
At the Berlin concert, I invited a Hemet city council member who happened to be there, and he remarked that what we have there is something special. They don't have it in Hemet. They have the Ramona Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah, and his goal is that one day hopefully they can put together something like what we have. So I think it's important that we have that and that we use it. Before I ask you my questions, my concern is that because of the fact that we had these going before and this council ended them.
Correct.
This would have to be a home run, because if we do it and it doesn't work and we end up absorbing a huge cost, the likelihood of doing it again anytime soon,
correct,
it's going to be a lot harder. So you're the one who can probably best decide whether or not we're going to hit a home run or not. And so keeping that in mind, how would you sell the tickets? I mean,
we're going to sell them again at Chatney Center at the City Hall.
Okay.
We can print them in-house. We'll get them going as soon as possible. What I figure we'll do is sell the tickets, and then we're going to issue wristbands at the 2 gates we're going to use. That way we'll put the wristband on, take their ticket. That way they can come and go to the market night or food truck, whatever we do out there, without any issues there. We'll also sell them at the gate. I was going to use recreation staff and lifeguards to sell those. Talk to finance. They're willing to put an employee into an area to take care of getting the money counted and getting it taken care of that way. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But again, I can't speak of the national acts that we've been in that have reached out. I just can't do it yet. I wish I could. I will be totally surprised if you don't get the 10,000 plus.
okay. Will there be a beer garden?
It's been discussed. I figured I would go through the city manager and through the chief of police to see if we could do that. There's been talk about dropping one in where the skateboard park is. It's already a fenced-in area. There's a couple of companies that will come in there, park them, and then that would be a $10 gate to get in that side of it. And they're basically locked in that area, but it's a great viewing area of that stage.
And
we don't use a skateboard park anyways.
I'm estimating about 6 weeks to promote this.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you got to go ahead tonight, how quick would you be able to start promoting? How quick could we start Facebook and
Monday.
that kind of stuff? Okay. And
As long as we can get that national act signed tomorrow. And that's my big kicker.
Is there any potential for any parking revenue?
We talked about possibly parking on the baseball field, $5 a car. Again, we're going to need to staff it and park it. We could do it, yes, because we don't use a baseball field for either event.
Charge at the sports park with free transportation over, or
I would say
I don't want to nickel and dime people.
Right, and that's what I think we may end up doing. I really think that you could look at your 2-week ticket sales, and then we could decide if we want to throw out that paid parking. I just think you're going to home run it with the $5 gate. I really do.
Okay.
You know, I wish, and you look back at some of these, and I wasn't allowed to, but if we would have just had a $5 gate with Leanne Rhymes, you'd have brought in close to $65,000, which would have paid her wages. So, and that was just her crowd. So, I mean, there's been crowds bigger than that, Switchfoot, Doodle Bops that Chief loved, but other things like that have really brought in major crowds.
One thing I like about selling tickets is, over the years, I have sort of questioned the accuracy of the crowd count.
Sure.
Because I went to a Staples hockey game, sold out, and then
That's 17,000 people.
Yeah, and then the next day or two, I'm at a Beaumont. I forget, it might have been Leanne Rhymes.
Sure.
And the numbers were, there were more people there than at Staples, and I just found that really hard to believe as far as the.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you use your July 4th number, you're counting everybody watching the fireworks or just counting the people in the park.
Right.
Because that number's huge. Just, you know,
So
the whole area. So.
It'd be interesting to actually, we've never really officially quantified how many people were actually there.
Right.
Okay.
I know that just when I was saying the bands that would come in are going to get a $75 to $100 ticket price. And I think when the general public see it at $5, I think, I'd just be surprised.
Well, I think the key would be to get a band that reaches the middle demographic. So, you know, if I'm in my, if I was 10 years younger,
I was waiting for a number.
I'd be bringing my kids who would be their age they are now, and they would enjoy it. If it's a band, you know, I don't know that they would enjoy Kenny Rogers that much.
Correct.
Even though I might. So, so I think it's key if you can appeal to the 40 to 50-year-old parents who have teenager.
Well, I think we would.
Kids. Okay.
Just one question.
Okay. Yes, go
And did you kind of survey the surrounding communities? August 2nd looks pretty good. We're not looking at a big competition from Calamasa. Are you kind of?
No, the couple nationals that we're looking at actually have gigs up north after us, so that's why you're able to catch them.
Okay. And you won't have any other type of?
No, in fact, they won't. As far as an event on that day, no. Wednesdays, that's why Wednesday was so successful, but the artists themselves do blocks of radiuses, so you wouldn't get them that close anyway.
I was just worried about
as far as the
one
artists
big-
themselves.
against another city's big event on that day.
I don't know, Wednesday night. That's why it's been so positive, I think. You know, yeah, it would be nice to do Saturdays, but then we're really going to be doubling these numbers is the problem.
And let me remind you about the hit a home run. The state of,
Yeah, you know, I was wondering, where are we going with this?
The state of the city's 2 weeks later, so.
Okay.
And I hear there's a good chance that possibly, maybe, this could be the debut for optional redemption.
Wow.
This could be the debut performance for optional redemption.
No, he won't.
So,
You ride that horse, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Barn.
You know what?
So we need a,
Take that challenge.
we need a motion, or unless there's more discussion or comments.
Make a motion that we authorize staff to go ahead and proceed with the, I forget how it's.
Say it right. One night, one band, one great.
Yes, one night, one band, one
Great being.
great evening.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes.
Do we authorize solicit bids as well?
Yeah, that covers approve the community services department to contact booking company and city staff to solicit bids for production. Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't have that.
Next, hard act to follow is short-range transit.
What you've all been waiting for all night. Transit's fun. So we're going to give a short presentation on the short-range transit plan. And generally what we've done in the past is kind of summarize the key points of the SRTP. However, this year, I have Selena here with me, and we are going to actually not only talk about the short-range transit plan, but some of the other things that we're working on in the department, to give you an idea of the projects that we're working on. So Selena and I are going to tag team tonight, and we'll be switching as we go through. So the short-range transit plan was approved by our CTC last Wednesday. Thank you, Mayor. And it's a two-year budget, if you will. We focus on the upcoming fiscal year 17-18, but we also talk about what we plan to do in 19-20. It's at this point just proposed. There is no funding directly tied to the second fiscal year in the plan. Are we ready? Okay. So I wanted to start out with our organizational chart because I know that was one of the questions that council had the last time I spoke about the department, I think, during the budget hearings. And you can see at the top we have council, city manager reports to council, transit director, me, reports directly to the city manager, and then secondary to that is the management analyst, which is Selena, and then we also have a CSC in the office, who, by the way, is leaving us. He took a promotion to the building department, and I'm very excited for Shane. And so we'll be replacing the CSC in the office. We're in a recruitment right now.
And CSC is?
Customer Service Coordinator, yeah. And then underneath the transit director, we have two divisions. We have the operations division, which is all of the bus drivers. And then we also have the vehicle maintenance supervisor, who does centralize vehicle maintenance for the city. That fourth mechanic position, I should point out, is a new position in this upcoming budget. Council did approve the position when you approved the transit services budget back in May. And so that position is also out, and we will be at the job fair on Thursday that Anita was here speaking about to promote that position. I wanted to touch on how RCTC's allocations get divided up between the public transit operators, because I do think that's important to look at the county picture as a whole. So as you can see, Banning and Palo Verde, which is Blythe, they're about 1% of the allocation. The total, now this is not rail, this is just bus. The total allocation, they're 1% each. And then Beaumont and Corona, about 2% each. City of Riverside Specialized Transit is 3%, and then our two big partnering agencies, RTA and Sunline, make up 91% of the total monies allocated to RCTC. And this information did come off of the other operators' SRTPs. So here's our budget, and we start off with our operating expenses, and you can see there's two line items there. One is operating expenses, and then one says Route 136. That is part of the operating expenses. However, RCTC staff has asked us to do a separate line item because that is a new route. That is the Calamasa route that we just started about a year ago. And they would like us to separately track the expenses that we spend on that route and the revenue, which is the last column over the fare box. So our total operating expenses are $2,655,933, and you can see on the last column there, $265,593 is a nice exact 10% mandated fare box that we are required to collect from passengers. Underneath the operating, you see two capital projects that we requested in this year's budget. The first one is CNG station improvements. That's an additional $300,000. Selena's going to talk about capital improvements shortly. But just so you know, that is not $300,000 total. That's another added $300,000 from our previous fiscal year requests. And then the Prop 1B security for fiscal year 16-17. That is based on, and Selena can correct me, that is based on population demographics for Beaumont. So that is not an amount that we request. We're told this is what you can have, and of course we like to ask for all of it. So it's $14,990, which brings our total budget to $2,970,923.
And the 10% fare is just based on the operating, not the total?
Correct.
Okay.
The capital is not included in the 10% mandated. So if you break that down by cost elements, this is what we have. 84% of our operational costs are attributed to salaries and benefits. The fuel and oil is 5%. Miscellaneous, like supplies, utilities, uniforms, is 4%. The transfer out, which is 4%, that is a $100,000 transfer into the general fund for administrative overhead expenses. Finance, city manager, other departments, HR, that covers their costs. Vehicle maintenance is 2%, and then contractual services is 1%. So I'm going to turn it over to Selena, and she's going to talk about the capital improvement program for transit.
Okay, thank you. The second part of Transit's budget is capital improvement plan. So our capital improvement, we ask for additional money besides the operations that Elizabeth just spoke of. This year we asked for two different, or one thing, which is $300,000 to add on to our CNG station that we propose to start working on soon. So $300,000 is the only capital improvement that we asked for this year. In addition, I asked and received $14,990, which is also earmarked towards the CNG station, and that was the Prop 1B grant, and that's going to be used for the security cameras for the CNG station when we do get it up. At this table here, I have lumped together projects that are similar in nature. So you'll see that the CNG station, over the years, you'll see in the fiscal year list right there, all of the fiscal years that are added towards this. So in fiscal year 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, we've asked for and received total now $1 million of STA funds, and there's some grants in there, and total available would be the 1.149 over there. So it goes across the board. So CNG station has that much. We also have some money for bus purchases, as we need to retire buses. We have some money there to purchase new buses. Also some improvements to Building D, which is where transit is currently housed. We have residual money from previous SRTPs that is rolling over. Also vehicle maintenance facility. We have some previous years in there. In that aspect there, it's also for shop tools as well as improving the building that it's in. The $18,724 grant that's over there, that one is specific to replacing their security gate that's in the front of their building that faces California. It's kind of old and dilapidated. We're trying to get an RFP together to bring over to you for an automated gate. We're trying to do solar, but solar company says that the battery wouldn't be strong enough, so we're working out the bugs for that, and that should be coming to you soon. We also have two grants for fiscal year 16 and 17, specifically for the Commuter Link 125, and that's going to be our medical facility Commuter Link, which would basically bring passengers from the Pass area over to Kaiser Medical Facility over on California and Redlands. We're working out some details with City of Redlands too that we hope to bring to you, as well as a stopover at the Loma Linda Ambulatory Care Center over on Redlands Boulevard. After that, so now we talked about the money, so we wanted to look and see who our passengers are. So we took a look at our demographics for our passengers, not including the youth passengers. We found that 74% of our passengers are below the poverty level, making less than $25,000 a year. So we are under the assumption then that those folks are probably transit dependent. They need us to get them around to where they need to go in and around the area. So we have our fixed routes, of course, that go around Beaumont, but we also have our commuter link that can link them to San Bernardino and further. We also took a look at our demographics of who's actually getting on the bus. Every route, every day, every loop, we keep track of who's getting on the bus. So we found year to date that 49.7% of all of our passengers are youth passengers, and that would be K through 12 basically. So a big chunk of our passengers right now are youth passengers. 28.52% are general passengers, and then 16.79 are senior disabled. So now I'm going to give it back over to Elizabeth.
So the reason we wanted to emphasize and focus on youth passengers tonight is because we've been looking at our routes, and we want to talk about peak service routes. We've never really talked about peak service routes or focused on them in front of council, so we want to bring that to light tonight. A peak service route, we have two. They're routes 7 and 9, and what they do is they operate during peak times, 6:30 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. and 2:45 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Before school, after school. The two routes one services Fairway Canyon and Tournament Hills, and the other services Seneca Springs. On those two routes, the passenger base is 100% youth riders going to and from school. Now, if you recall, on this side, this is system-wide. Half of our passengers are youth. When you look at these two routes together, 100% of our passengers are youth. Very rarely will we see a general or a senior or a vet get on one of these buses. These two routes combined make up 26% of our passengers system-wide. So a quarter of our passengers system-wide ride these routes. We went back to the comprehensive operations analysis, which we did in 2014, and there was an interesting fact in the service assessment findings that I wanted to share with you today, and I'm just going to quickly read it. Peak-oriented service can cost more to provide than all-day service. Because we run all-day service in addition to school trips, we must invest additional resources in these other routes. This means buying and maintaining more buses and hiring additional drivers. Though all these buses are not used throughout the day, we must maintain the fleet and payroll big enough to cover demand at peak times, and this can be incredibly costly. So, translated, that means that the more we see youth passengers, the higher our costs are going to go, as long as those routes are only during peak times. So that begs the question, why do these two routes only operate during peak times? Several years ago, we budgeted for these two routes to operate all day, 6:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, both routes. We saw 0 passengers, except during these times. And so, because we couldn't meet our 10% mandated fare box, because the buses were running empty about 8 hours a day, we had to eliminate the hours, and we track passengers hour by hour, loop by loop. We had to eliminate the loops where we saw 0 passenger base. And so these two routes have evolved into peak times. It wasn't that we designed them as peak times and didn't explore a regular route. It was we explored the regular route, it didn't work, so now it's become a peak time. So I just wanted to start that conversation with you because there's some confusion when we talk about routes. Peak routes are more expensive than routes that run all day. So we looked at, okay, so if peak routes are more expensive, where are we going to look for our ridership to sustain Beaumont Pass Transit? We need to start looking at what else is out there that we can sustain our budget. And so we looked at what we call choice riders. Choice riders are people that have a driver's license, they have a car, they're gainfully employed, they're higher, they're about the median income or higher. And so we call those choice riders. Choice riders are people that choose to ride public transit, not transit dependent. 22% of our passenger demographics are choice riders. 38% are transit dependent, and 40% don't have a driver's license at all, and those are predominantly youth. So now we're going to talk to you about what we're going to do in the future to attract choice riders so that we can sustain the transit services program.
So we want to get people excited about using public transit. So the best way to get people excited about using public transit is to hold their hand to do it. So we want to expose people to transit and getting in and around Beaumont and around the regional area by taking trips. So we would like to, and we're starting, travel training trips where we're going to go from Beaumont to the Metrolink station in San Bernardino, where we're going to get on the train and we're going to go to LA and back. And we will be available as staff every step of the way to hold your hand. So the purpose of this is to expose those people who would normally not ride transit because they're apprehensive for some reason. Maybe they're just a little unsure on how to read the timetables. They're not really sure what they're getting into. So people who ride transit a lot, which is myself, would be happy to show them around. So that's what we're trying to do. We have flyers in the back for it. We're trying to promote this everywhere we can. Our first trip is going to be July 13th for this particular one. But we do want to share with you a picture of our very first trip that we took to Union Station. This is our group that we took. It was a great trip. It really was. We went to Union Station. We had lunch. We walked around. The lady that's in the very front over here on the right side, she's from Boston. She always wanted to go to LA. She's here all by herself. Her family doesn't live around here. She always wanted to go, didn't know how to do it, and we took her there. I took her on an adventure, though. We went on the buses. I took her on the subway. We went all over the place. So that is what we want to do. And our purpose for this is to expose people that public transit isn't as scary as maybe some people might think, and we want to gain those choice riders and increase our future. Other ways that we would like to get people involved is by being out in the community. So we have the 4th of July shuttle, of course. We participate in the Cherry Festival Parade. We also do the Holiday Lights Parade. This year we did Beaumont and Calamasa. Last week we had Dump the Pump on June 15th. It's a nationwide thing where basically you dump the pump and you take public transit. So folks who rode the Commuter Link 120 rode for free all day last Thursday. We also participate in Veterans Expo. We'll be at the job fair on the 22nd. And it sounds like we're going to be shuttling folks to the summer concert. We also put Facebook posts about all of the things that we're doing, nice little friendly outreach stuff. One of the projects that we just are completing, phase 1, is our new onboard video camera and audio system. This is also going to create some sort of security for those choice riders, because that is where we're trying to focus our attention to grab those folks. So our phase 1 is going to be completed this week. Our install is all done. Phase 2, which is the purchase of the server and storage equipment, which council approved on June 6th, is underway. And then phase 3, based on all of this, is going to be free Wi-Fi. So people who are on our buses will be able to use their data, use our data instead of their data on the cell phones.
And then the last couple slides, we just wanted to let you know, we did launch a new website. It's called passtransit.com. And that is, it's one location for all past transit information, including Banning, Beaumont, and Calamasa. It's less confusing for passengers. They don't have to differentiate between, am I going to the Beaumont website or Banning website to find out which route I need to ride. It's a one-stop shop, if you will. We have the ability to send service alerts via this website, and we have given Banning access to those alerts so that they can do their own. The website does link to regional service providers such as RTA, Sunline, and Omnitrans. And then finally, we do have the link to Double Map, which is something I spoke of previously. This website is a shell, and all we did was set up the face page with links and buttons to all the other information that's already out there, and we just kind of pulled it all together onto one page. And passengers, we've gotten great reviews from passengers about now they don't have to worry about whether it's Banning or Beaumont, Calamasa. All they have to do is remember passtransit.com, and everything is there. And if you look at the top right of the screen, that is actually a snapshot of the homepage of passtransit.com. And by the way, it was, I think, $250 to secure it. One of the other things we're doing to market to choice riders is interagency agreements. You saw one tonight with RTA. We previously presented to you and you approved Omnitrans and BVTA. Sunline will be on a future agenda. The importance of these interagency agreements is to facilitate passenger movement across regional public transit providers. Again, choice riders, they don't want to have to pay every time they board a different bus. Multi-use passes allow ease of transferring where two agencies connect. If I bought a multi-use pass in Beaumont and I needed to transfer to RTA, all I have to do is show that Beaumont multi-use pass and I get on RTA free and vice versa. And there's no money exchanged between the agencies. We believe that we are increasing their passenger base, they're increasing our passenger base, and it's a win-win. So on the horizon, we are looking at a fleet fueling station. That is the CNG station. We're working with Public Works. We will be bringing to you in August the feasibility study, and we will be looking at including other fueling options besides CNG. We do need to propose to you a fare increase. Our previous fare increase was April of 2012, which was over 5 years ago, and the cost of living has increased. The cost of doing business has increased, and we need to maintain that 10% fare box. That 10% has to come from passenger revenue. It is going to take some interagency cooperation with Banning. That is key. We have similar fare structures right now. We want to maintain that level of similarity. It will require a public hearing and it will require council approval. So you'll be seeing that come back sometime in the fall. We need to sit down with Banning and agree on an increase. Highland Springs Avenue corridor bus stops, we're working on putting some bus stops on Highland Springs Avenue. We're coordinating with Banning to do that. It is really for the passengers for that corridor. We are going to propose, probably not this budget, but next budget, a rapid express route to and from Casino Morongo from Walmart, and we would like to see a 15-minute headway on that. And then the new route that Selena talked about, we're really, really hoping that that new route goes in the next fiscal year and that we have enough funding to do that. And that's it.
Any questions? Mr. Laura, go ahead.
Elizabeth, when you put in the new bus stops, when you talk about Highland Springs or wherever you're going to put them in, are they covered bus stops or are they open?
We are out of shelters right now, bus shelters, and so that for now they would be open with a bench. But in the next cycle round, that is one of the things on our list is to ask for more. We did secure 27 shelters and we did place them throughout the city. So we would need to do another bid with more grant funding.
Okay, yeah, because I did hear that there's grants for the covers, right?
There is.
Yeah.
It's a prioritization.
Sure. And when you say the Redlands medical facilities, you're talking about the VA and where else?
Kaiser Redlands.
Yeah. Okay. Do we ever talk about doing a run to Loma Linda? Is there enough interest?
We have a run to Loma Linda right now.
Okay.
We go to the VA hospital right now. What we would like to do is add the second commuter link and go to the Redlands VA. Because it will reduce the time that the passengers have on the bus. If we split, we would have the 120 that's in place right now would be a commuter bus, and the 125 would be a medical bus. And so we would separate the passengers.
And those are different, the facilities do different services, so that would make it more comprehensive for all of the VA patients, right?
Correct, and the VA provides a shuttle from one facility to the other.
Right.
So it would reduce our costs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Laura.
One of the comments you made towards the end is a 15-minute headway to Casino Morongo. What does that mean?
15-minute headway means from point A to point B is 15 minutes. And then point B to point A is 15 minutes. Okay. And so a 15-minute headway means that you can get on the bus and in 15 minutes you'll be at the end of the final destination. In this case, there would only be one.
Wow. And then for choice riders, I know, I don't know if this is possible, but I know MetroLink sometimes will do like angel games.
Mm-hmm.
or beach trips, is it possible to try to connect with them as well from Beaumont to Metrolink to pick up on some of those?
We actually have a great relationship with Metrolink. We've secured several free train tickets.
Really?
We haven't announced it to the public yet, but the three dates that we have set aside for the travel training, those passengers that sign up will be traveling for free on the Metrolink. Metrolink really wants us to promote this program. We did, because I went to an Angels game last week and I wanted to ride the train. Unfortunately, it was a Wednesday game, and the Metrolink only provides the Angels Express on Friday nights out of Riverside, unless you want to go through Union Station and down. So that kind of sparked some conversation with staff about providing a Dodgers Express bus. Right now, if you took our commuter link to the San Bernardino Metrolink station to go to a Dodger game, you wouldn't be able to get back home because we stop running at 8 o'clock at night. And so we're looking at, in the next fiscal year, a Friday night Dodger Express where we would send a bus at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night to meet the train to get the Dodger fans back to the Pass area.
Cool.
It's incremental. I'm an Angels fan by marriage, so don't tell my husband that we're starting with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree. We don't really need a Dodgers. I'm San Diego born, so my wife's from Northern California.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
One more question I forgot.
I got a couple too.
I want to.
Go ahead, Mr. Martinez.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Oh, you want, okay,
I've
so.
already asked some.
Oh, okay.
I just forgot one, so you go ahead.
Oh, okay, I see. So I did have a question on the Metro connection, so he answered that one. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions on the grants that are rolling over to the open projects. Do they have an expiration on them, or do you have pretty much leeway on when you can?
Do we have? Oh, one of the grants is expiring, so we do need to get that done. But the capital that you see in the SRTP, they encourage us to get those done within a few years, or reprogram the money. But I think the security grant is the only one that has an expiration date.
Okay. And are we getting the full fare from the students, or how does the students paying? I don't know much about fees, but can we charge a peak hour fee? Or do all fees have to be the same across the board, or?
I'd have to research the TDA, the Transportation Development Act. I don't believe we can charge peak amounts. The students pay $1 a ride, which is a reduced fare, similar to our discounts for seniors and veterans and disabled. One of the options that we can look at is not giving youth a discount, and they pay the same as general. Other agencies do that. RTA, for example, they don't have a reduced fare for youth. Their youth pay general fare. There's some things that we can look at. We have to do an elasticity study, and again, this is contingent upon our neighboring city sitting down and talking about fare increases.
That's right. Okay. All right, that's all. Just those two. Thank you.
Carol?
You can maybe clarify if there's any background knowledge that you have on this. I did hear that there's talk about a train stop, a commuter train stop, and it's being talked about as being somewhere between Coachella Valley and Redlands. And I also heard that Morongo's really petitioning to build up a bus hub stop so that that would be the best precursor to them then saying, let's just replace this demand spot for bus transportation with rail transportation. So I'm just sharing that I'm sort of hearing these assorted things, and you would know in terms of strategy and long-term planning if you've heard anything similar to this, and if so, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yes, I have heard. In fact, I attended a meeting about 3 years ago. RCTC staff presented, I believe it was in Banning, the San Gorgonio Pass line. It was the Coachella Valley line with a stop in the San Gorgonio Pass. It was my understanding at that time that Morongo had secured land and was starting design on a stop near the casino, not necessarily at the casino. I believe it was south of the 10 freeway in that area over there. What I can share with you, and I can send it to you, part of RCTC's SRTP hearing last week, one of the SRTPs was about $226,000 dedicated to the environmental and design of this Coachella Valley line. And you would be, I believe all of your questions would be answered with that document. I scanned it. They're not saying where in the pass area, but they're saying definitely probably we need one here. And then, of course, you know, out in the desert. And
Well, if it's, I just don't want it to be a done deal because it wasn't talked about. It seems to me that the rest of the pass should be also considering whether a rail stop would be advantageous to them. And I realize that it would be great for it to be near Morongo for people who want to stop and go to the casino. But if it stopped here, you could shuttle the buses to the casino, and then we might get more benefit all the way around. But
and you know, we have the 79, the 60, and the 10 that all converge right here. And so we would get the Hemet, San Jacinto traffic, the Moreno Valley traffic. So we truly are positioned in a prime location to have that train stop.
do we need to do anything more proactively for this? Or, because I don't want us to just not talk about it and then it becomes more solid as every day goes by.
What we can do is we can do all of the research and get the questions and the information compiled and bring a report back to council so that you have the full picture of what's going on, the design, the environmental, and then our recommendation on next steps. But it's several years out.
I know, but you know how that is. It'll be quasi-decided and then it'll just walk in that direction. And maybe we should also be talking to RCTC a little bit about it too.
Absolutely, yeah. We can put together some bullet points and bring it back.
Okay.
Because it is a discussion as part of public transportation that we should be having.
Thank you.
How's the Calamasa route doing?
It's up and down. It's struggling. It does have a 2-year exemption on it, so we are hopeful. We are providing quarter 25-cent rides in July to their food program that they have for the youth in Calamasa. The school district sponsors that. And we are reaching out to the school district and the schools to provide more marketing.
Is that a peak route?
No.
Okay.
Well, let me clarify that. The 136 is a full route. The peak times go to the school.
Okay.
So it does run all day.
And sort of to piggyback on what Mr. Martinez asked you, you said youths are paying $1, and that's similar to seniors and vets. What's the general?
General is $1.15, and seniors and vet is 65 cents.
Okay. And for youth, they pay $1 every time they get on, or can they buy a pass for the whole month, and is that a discount over the $1?
We do offer a monthly pass. It is discounted over the $1. It's $30. So if they ride to and from school 5 days a week, there's 20 days generally in a month, so that's $40. So it is discounted. The only other media that we offer is a punch card, and it's 10 rides, but there's no discount. It's $10.
Okay.
So they can pay every time they get on. They can buy the punch card or the discounted monthly.
It'd be interesting to know what percentage of youth are buying the passes versus paying the everyday fee.
I can bring that back to you or email you. It is lower than we've seen in the past because we no longer sell the stickers for the monthly passes on the bus. in order to buy a monthly pass, the passenger, generally with their parent, has to come to City Hall during office hours, and that is not convenient for working parents. And so they can buy the punch cards from the drivers. They'll write a check for $10, they'll give us $10 cash, or they'll pay cash. So monthly sales is not, at least for youth, it's not one of our, but we have the breakdown, I can give you the percentages.
Okay. Travel trips, Mr. Lara had suggested some other locations. He had actually had beach written on there, but he didn't mention the beach. So I'm going to mention the beach would be a good place. Is it possible to connect, for me to get on a bus in Beaumont and end up at Ontario Airport or LAX?
Yes.
Okay.
I've actually done the LAX one.
Okay.
I called it Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
How long-
I took the 120 to the San Bernardino Metrolink to Union Station, and then from Union Station, they have what's called the LAX Flyaway.
Okay.
And it's $8, and it's a bus, and it takes you right to the departing terminals of LAX and drops you off at whatever airline you're going to.
Have you used that, Mr. Pardon?
No, I took 4 days and I drove from LAX.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. It's the best
If you
7
do the Redlands medical, seriously consider the Beaver Medical Center there at Cajon and Olive. It's a very, a lot of people in Beaumont who can't get the services they need here have to go down there. So.
We will look at that.
Okay.
We are having difficulty getting the stop. Selena has been persistent for the last year, and that's not an exaggeration, it's been a year, that we have been talking to the city of Redlands about permission to put a bus stop in their right-of-way. And the reason we're going directly to Redlands is because Omnitrans doesn't have a stop. We could piggyback on Omnitrans's other stops, but they don't have a stop at Kaiser Redlands. So we had to go directly to the city, and it has been a year, and we still do not have approval. But we will add the Beaver to our future route alignment.
Okay. We need to hold a public hearing on this, I believe, right?
Yes.
So is there anyone for public comments? So we'll open the hearing at 9:36. Is there anyone who wants to speak? So we'll close the public hearing at 9:36. Before we move on to approve or the report is presented, I wanted to give you guys an update on my conversations with Banning Council and Mayor. Originally, we had authorized a 2x2. Right. We had the first 2x2 scheduled, and Banning objected to having a 2x2 because they didn't want to have a public a meeting. So I had a meeting with Mr. Moyer, the mayor in Banning. I thought it was a great meeting. We had some conversations. That was probably, a couple months ago, I think. Since then, he has made promises to meet with me. He has suggested to meet with me. But every time I reach out to him with an email or a text message to get together, I'm not getting much response. So I know that we still have some significant issues between Beaumont and Banning and the routes that we are sharing. And with the help from Mr. Pardon and Elizabeth, we put together some ideas, some suggestions to talk to Banning about. And I'm just hoping that at some point, Mr. Moyer will find time in his busy schedule to meet with me, and so we can move on and try and make some suggestions. But they continue, as far as I can tell, and I'm hearing it from other council members, continuing to complain about Banning or Beaumont being old Beaumont, yet they're not making the effort to reach out and return the effort that we're making to reach out to them. So it's sort of disappointing at this point, but I'll keep you guys updated if it gets better. So that's it. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the SRTP for fiscal year 2017-18?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. And I guess, Mr. Pinkney, you need to leave.
I'm going to recuse myself because this matter involves my law firm.
Okay, item number 28, city attorney invoices for the month of May 2017 in the amount of $62,065.22. Are there any questions or comments for staff on this one? Are there any public comments? Okay.
Mayor, if there are no questions or comments, I'll make a motion to approve all of the invoices, for approval of the invoices, sorry.
Okay. I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor White.
Yes. This time for council reports, we'll go in reverse order. I have nothing to report. Mr. Martinez, you're up next.
Oh, thank you. Met with the EDC on the Economic Development Committee on June 14th. I want to welcome Mayor White to the committee. We'll be dark in July and resume again on August 9th. We talked about the committee was presented a report on the public works projects, sales tax update, and wastewater treatment projects. I attended the 45th celebration of the Beaumont Cherry Valley Parks District on June 16th. I want to thank the district for the invitation. I learned a lot about history about the district. Enjoyed it very much. Congratulate Councilmember Lara for his recognition he received, and all the other past board members that received recognition on that. And I just want to remind the community that we have a general plan community workshop tomorrow, City Hall, 6 to 8. Correct?
I think it's at the Chatney.
Or is it Chatney?
Yep, the gym.
Chatney. And that's all. Oh, it is here. I thought it was.
Sorry, not bad.
Okay, so let me correct here at City Hall, 6 to 8.
Is there an expectation for either council or those of us who are on the task committee to do anything other than just be there as a general member of the public?
Just to be there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. That would be Mr. Lara, you're next.
Yes, on June 10th, I attended a memorial service for Donna Franco, who had been a board member for the Beaumont Cherry Valley Park and Recreation District for 16 years. A couple things about Ms. Franco is she was actually a part of the first, not that she was in it, but she helped create the first Miss Beaumont pageant. And she also helped start Winter Wish, which is a very good program that we continue to support. And then on June 14th, I attended the Beaumont Cherry Valley Park and Rec board meeting. They have an opportunity right now, working with Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District and the County of Riverside, to look into expanding their district by incorporating Bogart Park. It's early in their review, but there is an opportunity there which would be great for the district. And then on the 16th, I did attend the 45-year anniversary, and I was harassed heavily for my Raider jersey that I wore, but it's
With a 49er player.
bear the brunt of that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Well-deserved harassment.
I attended the RTA budget meeting. I was very pleased to attend the Church of Christ 100-year celebration they had for their historic church, which is a historic site within the city of Beaumont. It was a wonderful celebration They had lunch afterwards. It was very nice. They did a very good job, and it's a lovely community church with a great historical background. So that was very enjoyable. The Finance and Audit Committee meeting was canceled, but it was rescheduled for next Monday. So I'm looking forward to attending that because there should be a good update there. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the city treasurer report.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. City manager report.
Nothing, sir.
All right. City clerk.
Nothing to report.
And city attorney.
I just wanted to note, number one, that I sent the council members confidential reports on the work that we have performed over the last month. And then in addition to that, so each of you should have received that. And then that report contains attorney-client privilege information. I'm also going to give you a quick summary of the litigation matters that the city has pending at this time. Rosemary Morgan et al. Versus Beaumont Police Department. That case is at the trial stage. We are just awaiting the settlement agreement to be signed. So the council voted to settle the matter, but we don't have the settlement fully executed yet. So we're awaiting that. And I'll keep you posted on that. Ramon Osorio versus City of Beaumont is also at the pretrial stage. There was a mediation that was scheduled. The other side, at the last minute, the day before the mediation, indicated they couldn't attend, and so they've requested to reschedule the mediation, and so we're working with them to reschedule it. Charles Peters, DBA Pioneer Mobile Home Village versus City of Beaumont. That case is on appeal over a venue issue, and at the trial court level, it's still proceeding forward. So there's a venue dispute that's up on appeal, but in the meantime, where the current venue is, the case is going to proceed forward. In other words, the appellate court didn't issue a stay of the lower court proceedings. The HUP cases are listed in the report that I provided to the Assistant City Clerk. We have several HUP cases. I won't go into any detail on those. Robert Duh and Sharon Teague versus City of Beaumont, that's at the pretrial stage. And then Urban Logic versus City of Beaumont. As the mayor announced during the announcements portion of the meeting this evening, last Friday we filed a cross complaint against Urban Logic and its former owners. And then this evening we reported out that the city council has authorized the filing of a lawsuit against the former city attorney at Cluffield and Wissaki. And that's my report this evening.
Thank you. I think the last item is future agenda items. Do you have anything you want to discuss?
Just real quickly, Mayor, I have something with that. I've got a few constituents that have been asking about if there's a way we can compile, I don't know if they're looking for a report, but they're looking for a way of finding out updates in their area. I'm not sure if we can do that by improvement area or such, but not so much, what's being done as far as bonds and stuff, but kind of like, what can we expect coming up in our area? What have you done in the area? Maybe it has to do with parks or roads or striping or building of some sort. And I thought maybe sometime in September or so, when we got some of our business out of the way, we might discuss how we can improve the communication with the community, because they hear a lot about, in general, what are we doing with the bridges and the off ramps and so forth, and that's good. But a lot of them, want to know, what are you doing here, in my little community and so forth. And I know we have so many different little sections around town that it'd be kind of nice, I guess, for the council too, to have a way of kind of keeping track of what's going on. So it's just something to think about, maybe we talk about in the future. And it's not too pressing right now with all our financial stuff that we're doing. Just something in the future, food for thought.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that before we moved here, when we were looking to move here, there was on the website stuff like what's going on there. And I think with all the projects that we will be working on next couple of years, it'd be nice to know. And I'm going to segue that into a question from City Manager. I need to know what's happening with that dirt over on Oak Valley. Everyone keeps asking me. And I've asked planning, and they've said that Argent is just moving dirt. Do we know anything more than that? Because, I mean, I get that question all the time. Some people are really upset because now, when they come out of Tournament Hills, they can see the Wolverine warehouse, which before they couldn't because there was a mountain in the way.
Yeah, that's Argent developing their next phase there of Fairway Canyons, and then at some point they're getting ready to move over to the Calamasa side, which will be, the other side of the hill that they'll be developing.
So what's going in where the dirt is? Is that homes? That close to the freeway?
I'll double check. Yeah, you've got. We'll pull the plans together, and we can get that to you. It'll be easier.
That's the most common question I've been getting the last couple of weeks. What's going on?
The word I heard was that they were selling the dirt, that the dirt was actually worth something to somebody else who needed it, and they had a big pile of it, and that they were actually taking it and selling it. And that since they hire people to work the traffic and everything, there must be a real need to decide to do it now, whether it be either that they have someplace they need to put it or whether somebody needs to sell it. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to find out specifically. Yeah. I'd heard from Argent that it was a zero sum site. So so you had cut and you had fill, and it's supposed to be a zero loss site. So we'll have to double check and see what's happening.
And you can do a project like that, just come in and move a whole bunch of dirt like that without having to get any permits or?
No, you've got grading. So you've got rough grading permits, and you've got your final or your fine grading permits that are out there. So, they've got permits. They're able to grade and cut, and do those things.
And if it's a balanced site, you should be exporting. If you're exporting, this needs to be included in your EIR, which you need to make sure that they're not.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:51.